Hey there, good morning, and welcome into a Friday edition of the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley, lucky enough to sit in today in the air chair for Sean O'Connell, who's apparently near the beach in Tampa, Florida, allegedly doing some work for the Pro Fighting League. I am here downtown in the Broadway Media Studios here of ESPN 792.1 FM, and so glad to be with you guys. Oh, man, can you smell it in the air? Oh, can you smell it? We're getting close to college football season. Week 0 is next week. We're 13 days away from Utah taking the field against the Idaho Vandals. The Big 12 season is on the doorstep. And I'm so glad to be with you guys today to be able to talk. If you think we're going to be talking about the NBA today, I love my friend Gordon Chiesa, and I like the NBA. But we're not talking about the NBA today. I love the hockey team here in town, the Utah Mammoth. We will not be mentioning any Mammoth today. We are football, and more football. College football is 13 days away here in Utah. And then, of course, the NFL's right around the corner as well. We're going to mix both of those in today. And I want to hear from you. We are so close to it. Camp ends this weekend for Morgan Scalley's guys as they wrap up camp and then kind of get into, I won't say game mode, but kind of game mode preparations as classes begin next week at the University of Utah. I've been up at camp a bunch the last couple of weeks, and things are going well for Utah. I'll put it that way. And I will say this, you've heard me on these airwaves with Sean and with Spence and hosting this show as well. You've heard my podcast. Hopefully you've heard my podcast, The Crimson Corner, or listened to my Under the Headset podcasts with the Utah football staff. I have been very bullish on this Utah football team. I think it's going to be a good year. Nothing I have seen in fall camp has changed that. In fact, it's just reinforced that. So I really feel like it's going to be a good year for Utah football. We'll talk about it today. We'll get your read on it today and all of that good stuff. And you can, of course, interact with me. 877-353-0700 is your text number to get on board today here on the Sean O'Connell Show with Bill Riley filling in, James Peterson producing things today. 877-353-0700 is your text line to reach the program today. And I'm toying around with something a little bit later on in the show today. We'll see if we decide to go in that direction. But for now, if you would like to say hi, if you want to drop a line, just whatever's on your mind this morning, or interact, talk a little football, Utes, Cougs, Big 12, big picture NCAA, you name it. We can do any of that stuff today here on the program. It's Football Friday. I'm not going to get to host very much on Fridays during the football season. One, because Sean doesn't go out of town nearly as much during the football season. But two, I'm pretty busy with both football duties and other director of broadcasting duties up at the University of Utah. So this might be the last time I'm hosting this program for a little while. Never know, something might pop up, whatever. But for now, this is probably about the last scheduled show. So this is a chance for us to interact and chat. Now, you could always do that on my podcast as well. I always like to get emails on my podcast, so you can do that too. briley@huntsman.utah.edu is my email address, briley@huntsman.utah.edu. But for today's show purposes, you can just simply use the text line, at least early in this program, at 877-353-0700, as we sit here 13 days away from the start of the college football season. 13 days away from Utah and Idaho taking the field at Rice-Eccles Stadium in front of what will be yet another sellout, and I think is what's going to be a very good year, very good debut season for Morgan Scalley and Utah football. I certainly think the schedule lines up that way. It is a very favorable early schedule for Utah. We'll get into some of that stuff today on the program. I've got some good guests coming on the program today. An old friend of the program from back in the Pac-12 Network days. He's now an NFL Network guy. Still does a little bit of college football stuff, too, I think, for the new Pac-12. Of course, my man Mike Yam is going to join us. Mike Yam at 11:30 today will join us. I was happy to see Yammer got renewed with the NFL Network. I know they and ESPN have been going through some cost cutting and some budgetary adjustments. So you always worry when those type things come down the pipe that people you know or people you like might be on the chopping block. Yammer is not one of those people, so I'm happy to see him back. We're going to talk some NFL preseason, regular season, and other stuff with him. Maybe bring up the swag copter with him as well. Chris Camrani. I have not had Camrani. Well, I mean, I don't host this show on a regular basis, but I've not had Camrani as a guest in quite some time. I love Chris. Chris is simply one of the most talented writers I've ever come across. He writes for The Athletic now. He was a Trib guy for a long time. And so Chris is going to come on, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about the college football season coming up and his thoughts on Morgan Scalley's first year, the Big 12 overall, and more of that. And then we'll talk some in-state football a little later in the program today. Riley Nelson is going to come by. The old lefty, Riley Nelson, who played for everybody seemingly except Utah in this state. He played for Utah State. He played for BYU. He was a high school legend here. And I just love talking ball with Riley because he watches all of it, and he's always got a good, straight, honest opinion on things. So we'll talk to Riley Nelson on the program today as well as we get you ready for the college football season coming up. Of course, right here on ESPN 700, 92.1, you'll be able to hear me call the games this year with the broadcast team beginning on Thursday night, September the 3rd. Pre-game coverage, I believe, should begin about 1 o'clock. No, I'm sorry, about 3 o'clock. Really, it'll be all day long, but 3 o'clock with Porter Larson and then myself and the broadcast team will be on board at about 5 o'clock with a 7 o'clock kickoff up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. By the way, FanFest is tomorrow night, a chance for Utah fans to come up and meet not just the football team, but all the different sports teams. That begins at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. I'll also be calling soccer tomorrow in the heat of the Saturday afternoon as they take on Southern Utah. Come up to Ute Field and watch that, or tune into ESPN Plus and see myself and Jay Nolly on that broadcast. So it'll be a busy weekend, but we're going to kick it off today with a lot of that. We've got the Little League World Series on the TV. You guys know how I feel about the Little League World Series. I'm happy for these kids to be there, but I feel like it's too much. I don't need to see. They've been running the qualifying rounds of this thing for a couple of weeks now. When I was a kid, the wide world of sports, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, they would carry the championship game, which was always Chinese Taipei, a.k.a. Taiwan, and somebody from the United States. And Taiwan always felt like they had a bunch of 17-year-olds going against our 13-year-olds out there. But occasionally we'd win that thing. But now it's just a lot. And I know there's not a lot on in the summertime, but, man, it's a lot of Little League baseball. And you have to really like baseball to want to watch a lot of Little League baseball. I like watching Little League baseball when my kids were playing Little League baseball or when I had some tie to Little League baseball, but I don't really care about some team from California and some team from Iowa squaring off at Williamsburg. But that's what we've got on the tube here today, and we'll keep tabs on that as we go throughout the afternoon. So anyway, as I mentioned, fall camp ends tomorrow for Morgan Scalley's guys. Things have gone well. For those that have been looking for, kinks in the armor and things like that, it has been a energetic, upbeat, very professional fall camp. Same way it was run in the spring with spring football this year. Scalley had a plan. He knew what he wanted to do. He has executed that plan perfectly. I have had so many people ask me. I've even had some people that had ties to the old coaching staff ask me about, how are things? How are things going? And I've told there's nothing to nitpick and dislike. And I'm lucky enough to get to watch a lot of practice with my position as the voice of the Utes and director of broadcasting, and it has gone swimmingly. And it's been different. It's a different run camp in some of those things than what they did before, but it's been impressive. And Utah has had a good fall camp to this point in time. There's not much time left in it. And then next week, they'll just kind of be in regular practice duty as they kind of ramp up to game week. When they get back on Monday, there'll be, 10 days to go until kickoff. So they'll be in kind of game week mode, even though it's not technically game week. What's impressed me this fall so far has been the offensive playmakers. I've said it on these airwaves. I've said it on my podcast. I've told everybody that I could talk to. I don't know that I can remember Utah ever having this collection of playmakers before. In the run game, in the pass game, obviously your quarterback situation is great too because you've got a top level. I really believe Devin Dampier. I know Noah Fafita's getting some shine and some others are too, and rightfully so. These are all good quarterbacks. But I think Devin Dampier's got a real chance to be the offensive player of the year this year. If the season goes as I think it might for the University of Utah, I could very well see him being named the offensive player of the year. But we've got a great backup situation as well with a guy like Bert Ficklin. So it's just I've been very impressed with the offense and the offensive playmakers. And another area I've been really impressed with this fall has been the secondary. You know, Sharif Shaw always does a great job with the corners. Now you've got Derek Odom back. He's coaching the safeties. You know, Morgan Scalley's commented on a number of occasions about the versatility of the safety room. I like what they have at the corner spot, too. So I really think that they've got those two areas in particular have really jumped out to me. And obviously there's still some questions, and you don't really get answers to it until you kind of get into real play. There's no preseason in college football, but I'm just really interested to see the offensive and defensive line, and especially the defensive playmakers. You know, who will those guys be? And I've said this all the time. John Henry Daly was not a known commodity a year ago. He had one sack in 2024 before he came and became a starter last year, and he got his opportunity to be a starter, and he blossomed last year before tearing his Achilles. I'm looking for somebody to kind of be that guy this year, you know, kind of be that playmaking guy this year that emerges just a little bit. And I think there's some guys out there. I think Lance Holtzclaw could be that guy. I think Cash Dillon could be that guy as well. I think we know there's a defensive playmaker and a guy like Jackson Benny. You know, ever since he's gotten a chance to be on the field as a walk-on, now a scholarship player, he's a guy that's just made plays in special teams and on defense as well. So that's one thing that I'm kind of watching early on is who could emerge as a defensive playmaker for this team. But as I said, I remain really, really bullish because of the offensive talent, because Utah's got a track record of trench development. I know there's questions, and that's okay. You lose 5 guys to the NFL on the offensive line, sure, there's going to be questions. Jordan Gross knows that. Morgan Scalley knows that. But there's talent in the program. And Utah has always had a track record of being able to develop both offensive and defensive linemen. I'm also bullish on Utah because the first half of that schedule this year is friendly. It is. It's a friendly early schedule. It just simply is. If you're being real about it, their first 6 games are against teams that are not preseason predicted to have great seasons this year. That doesn't mean they won't, because they very well could. But we'll see. But I think that first 6 games of the year in particular, the first 3 non-conference games and then the first 3 conference games, set up well for Utah to try to help develop some of that continuity. Then, arguably, at least preseason ranking-wise, the 2 toughest teams that are on your schedule, BYU, who's ranked, and Houston, who's ranked, they're both at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything, especially in the rivalry game. We know that. But that's a friendly, helpful deal for the Utah football team as well. So I think there's a lot of reasons. And I know there's some people on the outside. I know there's some people on the outside that are very skeptical of this Utah team, and that's fine. You know, Stuart Mandel is a guy that I consider to be a professional friend, and he does a great job with the Athletic. He picked Utah to be a 7-5 team and go 4-5 in conference play. And while I respect Stewart, I do, and everybody is entitled to their own opinion, it would have to go cataclysmically wrong this year for Utah to lose 5, in my opinion, for them to lose 5 games. You would have to be beset and just riddled with injuries in all your key areas and positions. I look at the schedule, and I'm not saying there aren't going to be losses, because you know me, I don't pick anybody to go undefeated ever. Although I would say that Texas Tech has got a really paper-thin regular season schedule. If I was picking somebody to go undefeated, it might be Texas Tech because their schedule. But then again, they've got questions at quarterback. What's Will Hammond going to be? Is he back at 100%? We'll see. But my point here is everybody's got an opinion on this thing, and it doesn't really matter because you kick things off in 13 days, and that's what really matters. But I would be very surprised. That's Mandel's prediction. And I know sometimes you take swings in predictions, but it is to pick a Utah team that's coming off an 11-2 season a season that could have very easily been a 12-1 season, to go 7-5 with an enormous amount of talent still in the program. I understand they're replacing the trenches, but if you followed this program for years, they've had a track record of being able to replace those guys. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form the offensive line this year is going to perform at the same level the offensive line did last year, because last year's offensive line was generational. It was. It's one of those offensive lines you have once maybe every decade or so, where you have 4 or 5 guys all on NFL rosters when it's all said and done, including 2 first-round draft choices. But what Mandel predicted in The Athletic this week would be very surprising to me. I would, though, like to hear from you guys today on this. What do you see as the floor, and what do you see as the ceiling for Utah football this year from a record standpoint? I'll give you mine in a few minutes. But if you would give me your floor and if you would give me your ceiling, I would certainly like to hear from you on that. And if you're a BYU fan, and I know some of you out there are, you want to give me the floor and the ceiling for Kalani Sitake's team, I would love to hear from you on that as well. 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700 to get you in and on board today on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley filling in today for Sean O'Connell here in the Broadway Media Studios of downtown Salt Lake City. So give me what you see as the floor, and give me what you see as the ceiling from a record standpoint for Morgan Scalley in year number 1. I usually make you guys give me a few first, but I'll give you mine right out of the gates, and we can get to some of yours coming up in just a bit. We'll ask Cam Ronnie that too, and we'll ask Riley Nelson that too, and Riley's probably got some opinions. Riley might be able to because he's a Cache Valley guy. And I haven't done a lot of deep digging yet on Utah State. I'll do that coming up soon. More of my focus right now has been on this Utah football team in fall camp. I'll turn my attention this weekend, though, to the Idaho Vandals. I'm sorry, did I say Mountain West? Oh, it's definitely the Pac-12 Utah State Aggies. But I'll dig into them a little bit deeper coming up. But Riley can give us a scouting report on them because, again, Riley follows everybody in the state because he's just such a ball junkie. For me, as I said, the first half of the schedule for Utah is very friendly. And I would be very surprised if they didn't open up the season 6-0, coming back home after the game against Colorado to face the Houston Cougars. Now, I think Houston is good, and I love what Willie Fritz has done. They played a very, very, very soft schedule last year. Now, albeit they made a huge jump last year. I think his first season they won 3 or 4 games. Last year they won 10. It's a good program. And he's got a veteran quarterback in Connor Wegman coming back, though there's been a lot of talk about this 5-star kid waiting in the wings. We'll see. Good running game, tough, stout defense, because that's what Willie Fritz does. Old school football coach. But I think being at home at Rice-Eccles Stadium, that benefits Utah a great deal. I think the schedule really begins for Utah with the BYU game. And because it's a rivalry game, and because BYU is very good again this year too, I think that's just one of those toss-up games. You just never know. But then you go to Arizona the week after. And then you play a good TCU team on the road the week after that before coming home to face West Virginia. Interesting, yesterday I was listening to Ryan Russillo's podcast, one of my favorites to listen to, and my friend Stanford Steve Coughlin was on this week. You know, Stanford Steve used to come on my show, game day guy, SVP's right-hand man. He picked West Virginia to go to the Big 12 championship game and face Texas Tech. Now, I think Stanford Steve wanted to be a little different because just about everybody's picking BYU, with a few outliers, maybe a Utah, maybe an Arizona, maybe a TCU, but he picked West Virginia. Now, West Virginia is going to have a really good running game. They've got Michael Hawkins, the transfer quarterback from Oklahoma, who's a running quarterback. Rich Rod loves running quarterbacks. And they've got an outstanding transfer running back as well, who was one of the best of the country a year ago. I think they'll be better. Utah sees West Virginia at home in the final game of the regular season, which will be interesting depending on where both those teams are at that point in time. You always wonder in that final game of the year, especially being on the day after Thanksgiving, who's really invested in being there and who's not. But here's what I'll do for you guys today. And then we'll get to some of your text messages at 877-353-0700. My floor for Utah football, meaning it's a good year, but there's some losses mixed in. My floor for Utah this year is a 9-3 football team. I think the second half of the season is where the challenge lies. And there's some good teams, Houston, BYU, Arizona, TCU, in that second half of the schedule. A couple of those on the road. But the ceiling I see for this Utah football team, and some of you may say I'm crazy on this, is possibly 11-1. I never predict anybody to go undefeated, but if everything falls into place for this Utah football team, because they've got offensive weaponry galore, Kevin McGivern's got a lot of toys to play with. And if the defense evolves and playmakers begin to kind of emerge, I think this team could be very, very good this year. I know a lot of people are sleeping on Utah, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it because you play in a power league. They're sleeping on Utah in that not many people are expecting Utah to be a playoff team or a team that can win the Big 12 this year. But they're not really sleeping on Utah in the fact that, a lot of people have picked Utah to be preseason ranked. So I think there's some sleeping, but not a ton, if that makes sense. 877-353-0700. So you guys tell me, floor and ceiling. And if you're a BYU fan, if you're a Utah State fan, if you're just a college football fan of a particular team, that's fine. Tell me the floor and ceiling for your team. Will Healy begins us today on the text line. Will says, ceiling 12, floor 9. Not too much different from me, but Will's saying possible ceiling undefeated. I just my rule of thumb is you never predict somebody to go undefeated. Spencer Cobb says, "Hey Bill, 6-6 for the floor, 11-1 for the ceiling. I think Utah's a great team, but look at Penn State last year, and plenty of other teams have high expectation and finish around 500. I only say 6-6 is the floor because that would assume that most things go wrong. That would assume a lot of things go wrong, Spencer. I also think 6-6 is the absolute floor. It's a pretty good place to be. Plenty of programs would take that. Yeah, but that would not be a pretty good place to be, even for a floor for a Utah football program that's got a ton of talent in it. So I will push back on that. I'm not pushing back on your prediction, but I don't think that's a pretty good place to be. Texter 3869 says, Bill, coaches and all of us make our money by pushing through when things go wrong. What will go wrong for Utah this year, and do you see Scally as an elite problem solver or TBD? Well, you never know till you're in it. But what I will say is Morgan Scally is an elite thinker and planner. And great coaches plan for things to go sideways. You have that second set, that backup plan if things go sideways. So you never know till it's in it, but I would say Morgan Scally's probably very well prepared for a lot of situations that could pop up. Texter 2086 says, hey, Bill, good to hear from you. Looking forward to the season. There's a lot of talent on this team to contend for the Big 12. Still questions about the O-line and the D-line, especially the D-line, because the K-State game will always be in the back of my mind. Also miss the old days when you did the pick the winner, pick the score contest. I didn't guess right, but it was still fun to do. Well, maybe Sean will pick that up. Maybe I'll come up with something on my podcast. We'll see. Thank you for that. Derek says, hey, Bill, not that I want to pile on BYU's turmoil right now, but if there's truth to all the tension between Sataki and Santiago, when any action be taken on the personnel front for a BYU school leadership or the first president, I have no idea. Derek, I have no idea. I don't know what's true and what's false. I don't know how things work down there. I would be the wrong person to comment on something like that. So. And by the way, I think you kind of like piling on BYU. I'm just saying. When you usually start a comment out by saying not to pile on something, it's like when you say, well, with all due respect, and then you proceed to insult somebody after you say with all due respect. So, just saying. Matt Rigby says, hey, Bill, is it a good season at 11-1 if the only one is a Holy War loss? Love Kalani except on November 7th. Well, yeah, I mean, you don't ever want to lose to your rival, but if you go 11-1 in a season, that's a good season. It is. It's not as good a season as you would hope for because you want to beat your rival in that season. But 11-1 is probably going to get you to a Big 12 championship game, and that would be good. A couple more, then we'll grab a break. We'll bring in Mike Yam here. Jordan Peters says 11-1 for the ceiling, 8-4 for the floor. That seems to be fair. Nathan Wold, W-O-L-D, Wold? Hey, Bill, love hearing you on the air. I would say the floor is 8-4 and the ceiling is 12-0. Can I say there are a lot of doubters of this Ute team? The entire Locked On Big 12 crew berates JT Wittresil for believing in the Utes. You know, one of those Big 12 teams beat the Ducks. Not one of those Big 12 teams beat the Ducks to the Trojans to win Pac-12 titles. Well, but that's old memory. This Utes team is built to win championships, and Scalley's got to figure it out. Coach Scalley feels like he has more Urban Meyer, plus a little Nick Saban in him than Whittingham. Well, I think he's got a little bit of Whittingham in him because he played for him and coached with him. Great coaches pick a little bit from everybody and kind of bring that in their fold. But, yeah, he's certainly got some Urban Meyer in him, too. There's no doubt about that. 877-353-0700. Floor and ceiling. How do you see it, Utah fans? BYU fans, floor and ceiling for your team. Aggie fans, floor and ceiling for your team as well. You tell me. We'll read more of your text messages coming up in just a bit. Maybe, just maybe, we'll take some telephone calls later, too. I don't know if I've taken a telephone call in years. Probably the last couple of years I was doing this show, it was all text. But maybe for some of you out there that might want to place a telephone call today and chat just a little bit, maybe we'll do that. We'll see. Maybe in the 1 o'clock hour. We'll see how it goes. Great to be with you today on a Friday, 13 days out from kickoff. Talk to our old friend Mike Yam coming up next from the NFL Network right here on the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Utah. So I don't deal in the NFL realm as much as Utah. So I don't deal in the NFL realm as much as I used to. Most everything's collegiate now. But having the Smiths, this charming man, bring us in with our next guest, NFL Network host, and of course, man about town in Los Angeles. Sometimes, just sometimes, probably thinks back on the days where he would try to field punts. It's Utah football practice in the fall, and or hop on the swag copter with Kevin Sumlin. Our friend Mike Yam, kind enough to walk down memory lane and talk a little ball with us today. How are you, Mike?
There is so much to unpack on the last 30 seconds of this radio show, and it's like we are just not even close. We might have to do the whole darn show together at some point. First of all, man, when I get a text message from you about popping on, you know the answer is always going to be yes. I miss hopping on with you. Randomly because I saw or heard the rejoin with about Sean O'Connell. I don't even want to spoil this because at some point I got to come on and just tell the story with him. I saw him in person a few weeks ago in Midtown Manhattan randomly on the streets of New York City. So that story for another day when OC's back. But you and I, man, there's a lot to, like I said, I'm thrilled. We can go down memory lane. You mentioned catching the punts and the whole thing. I actually thought about that the other day because Travis Hunter was kicking field goals. So we were talking on our show on NFL Network about, him maybe being like a three-way player. And we started talking like, hey, how hard do you think it is to kick field goals? And I'm thinking to myself, well, one, I've done that in Salt Lake City. Two, I've also, fielded punts or at least tried to field the punts. I shouldn't even say I did it because I didn't, but I was out there making the attempt. So once again, we could talk ball, we could go down memory lane, but it's great to be with you, man.
It's great to be with you, too. Were you guest speaking? Were you back walking the halls of Fordham? Is that why you were back in the city?
No, the crazy thing, I had like a small window before, and you know how this goes, man. Like we have college football around the corner. I'll be doing the CW this year. I got NFL Network, NFL Media, and then the NBA. So really on August 29th, essentially, like there's no days off for a few months for me. Like you're kind of everywhere and it's great and it's awesome. So it's the last time I could see my parents though in person unless they come out. And I tell them not even to come out in the fall because I can't even hang out with them. So it kind of stinks. So I was there, I was seeing family. I had my cousins that were there that I hadn't seen in a while. It was just like a family thing and it was awesome. And I get insanely homesick. And on my flight home to Los Angeles, I think, what am I doing? I need to just try to find any job, back home just so I can be closer to them. But nonetheless, then, I'm getting ready for the start of football. So we'll table that for another time.
I did the same thing 2 weeks ago. We went back to see my parents in their new place in Kansas City because once the middle of August hits, you don't have that time anymore. My question is, did you have that big bowl of fried rice and marinara while you were back with your parents?
Separately,
okay.
Not together, not on the same plate, but I do appreciate the reference big time.
That's Mike's book, by the way. It's a children's book that he wrote years ago called Fried Rice and Marinara. And so if you've got young kids or grandkids and want a good book to read to them at night, go try to find it. It's probably on Amazon. Everything's on Amazon. So I'm not even going to send you to a bookstore somewhere. Just go to Amazon and click through and buy Mike's book and read it to your kids or grandkids if you can. All right. By the way, congratulations on your new deal. I was so happy to see that. You're sticking around. We all know tough times out here on these media streets, especially where you work. So that had to feel good. Back for another few years. What are you doing at Network right now?
Yeah, so because ESPN and not to get too much into the broadcast weeds of it, but ESPN took over NFL Network, so I'll be still with the network, but NFL Media is still kind of like their fast channel, which is essentially any of the shows that are on connected devices on Roku, Tubi, if there's a NFL Plus, if there's the NFL app that you have on your phone or on Amazon Prime. That is, and podcast, that's all NFL Media. So I will be with them also this season. And then, obviously the CW and NBA TV. So very, very, very fortunate because as you made reference to the consolidation in this business, and I know it's not just media. I know it's a lot of tough times for a lot of folks. So, I feel very, very, very fortunate that, I have some of this work.
So you tell me, what's the most interesting story in the NFL right now?
Oh, God, I haven't been asked that question. Because we're always in the weeds on like, what's the story of the day?
Yeah.
I think I'll tell you this. We spent a lot of time talking about Fernando Mendoza, and I don't know if that's the best storyline in the NFL. I think there's some other ones that sort of stand out to me. Number one, the health of Patrick Mahomes.
Yep,
One side being out there,
Chiefs fan right here. I'm watching those
totally.
camp updates every day.
Yeah, and you know this, and I know you just made reference to your folks in Kansas City, but like to me, you go from the peak of your powers, I mean, straight up dynasty to whatever it was, 10 consecutive years of winning the division, and we're talking about, this perennial Super Bowl power to not even being in the postseason. 2 years ago, all they kept doing was winning these close games, and all that happened last year was losing all of these close games. And to me, I just wonder what happens at the end of this season if the Chiefs don't make the postseason again. Because we spent so much time over the years, hey, Josh Allen, is this window closing? Like, I think Josh Allen still looks like a superhero out there. And they do have Joe Brady. I love the DJ Moore fit. Sure, I have some questions about that defense, but to me, when I look at Kansas City specifically, all the conversation, the national attention that they've gotten for the last 10 years, and now if they don't make the postseason for two consecutive seasons, I then really start to wonder what this franchise is going to look like. I think there's a lot of pressure on having some hits like they've had in the past, whether it was the Trent McDuffie certainly comes to mind, but these pieces on the defense where they hit in the draft, like they're trying to rinse and repeat right now. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how healthy Mahomes is. I know we're not going to see him much in this preseason. I know Justin Fields is starting this week in week number 2. But the point is, I think that is one of the juicier storylines in the NFL where I'm almost surprised it's not getting a little bit more attention.
Well, me too. But here's the story that I don't think is getting enough attention, though. They added Kenneth Walker, and I know that they have an elite offensive line. It's almost as if Andy Reid abandoned the run game the last couple of years, and everybody just dropped 8 into coverage and said, Patrick, you're great, but you're not going to beat us when we have 8 guys back here. I think that you're going to see them really, especially with Mahomes coming off the ACL, I think that they're going to emphasize the run, and when teams don't have light boxes anymore and they have to come up, I think there's going to be more for him to pass. Now, that's my hope. We'll see how that is. But that's my thought in Kansas City. I don't think the Kenneth Walker, I think when they signed him it did, but everything I'm hearing and reading is you're going to see a lot more of that ball in Walker's hands this year than you are maybe down the field, at least early on.
Yeah, I think they have to. And I think, it's the first time in a little bit here where I think that there is real pressure on that run game to actually deliver Kenneth is a known commodity that we feel really good about. And I think in previous years, it was, hey, a little bit of hype, feel good, like this could be good. It's like, no, this will be good because of him. And here's the other aspect of this. We're still talking about this offense and at times a lack of explosiveness downfield without Tyreek Hill. Like we ran a graphic the other day on NFL Network, and I turned to, I think it was Michael Robinson or MJD or David Carr, one of those guys. And I'm like, how are we still talking about Tyreek Hill not on the Chiefs and not necessarily having a guy that's been able to fill that void? Like this is remarkable to me that that's been the case. But because they've been able to go and, win Super Bowls. And Mahomes is the guy that, we're still is in that GOAT conversation. I think that's mitigated some of that, but I think it becomes more magnified based off of, I think it was a 6-win season last year. And obviously this is going to be uphill. This division for them is really tough. Like I still feel pretty confident in Denver. Their defense is like absolutely bonkers.
How do you feel? How do you feel about Bo Nix? How do you feel about Bo Nix, though? Let's be fair.
Yeah. So 2 things with Bo. One, I think he definitely delivered better than most would have anticipated. 1, 2, I think he doesn't get enough credit for how strong of an arm he does have. I think that's been on more display for him in Denver than it was, in college. So that's 2. Am I ready to call him an elite guy? No, but I look at their defense and I think it's elite. And I think that makes a lot of quarterbacks look really good. And they did win that division. And candidly, if he's not hurt, maybe we're talking about them, against the Patriots. Maybe we're talking about them as the Super Bowl team. So it's, do I think New England's getting back to a Super Bowl this year? No. Do I think Seattle? No, just because it's so hard to do that, which makes, by the way, that Chiefs run so spectacular. But Denver to me, if you said like, hey, pick I don't know, 4 or 5 teams. If you were making an educated guess on who could be in the Super Bowl, Denver would be on my list. And I don't think, I guess I'm indirectly answering your question, Bill. I don't know if I could say that if I didn't have confidence in Bo Nix.
Okay, fair enough. Mike Yam's with us, our friend from the NFL Network. You mentioned Josh Allen, and I think Josh Allen is a fantastic talent. But Josh Allen doesn't play his best in the playoffs, as we saw last year. If there was ever a year for Buffalo to get to the Super Bowl and Josh Allen to do it, everything was set for him to do it a year ago, and he wasn't able to do it. So, I mean, again, I'm not saying he's not a very good player and an elite talent, and you'd love to have him on your fantasy football team. But at some point in time, Josh Allen's got to do so. He didn't have the Mahomes thing hanging over him last year. Yeah, he didn't have 13 seconds last year. He had a beat-up Denver team, and he turned it over 4 times, and he was really the reason they lost and maybe big reason why McDermott got fired. So, I mean, is it kind of put up or shut up time now for Josh Allen in Buffalo?
You know, I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of the things that you just said, but then I take a step back and I say, okay, I can make the same exact claim for 2-time MVP and Lamar Jackson.
Oh, sure,
example.
sure.
And, you know, we were having a conversation before last season. When are we going to see Clemson, Trevor Lawrence? Like, this is a make or break year. And yet their offense, you know, basically weeks 11 through the end of the season was putting up like 34 points per game. And, you know, they were able to find another year that's there. So I almost feel like, and I don't really, I got to give this more thought. And maybe, you know, the next time you go back on Radio Bill, I'll have a better, more educated, thoughtful response to this. But that's what makes a guy like Mahomes, for example, just so damn special. Because if you said to me, like, even your question before about Bo, like, how confident are you? Like, well, I don't think he's Mahomes, right? But, you know, like, you know, how different, you know, do I have more confidence in Josh Allen or Lamar than I do Bo? Yeah, I probably have a little more confidence, obviously, in those other guys because the sample size is so much bigger. But you're right. Like, where are those postseason wins? And I think when the lights are the brightest, guy, that, you know, that one year actually Kansas City goes to Baltimore a couple of years ago in an AFC Championship game in Baltimore, and we're talking about whatever it was, 3 design runs for Lamar Jackson. That's like their best opportunity to go and knock off those dudes. Like, to win some of these games, you've got to win in the margins. And I don't want to blame just quarterbacks, although clearly that could be the difference for 90% of these teams. But sometimes, I mean, think about the matchups that the Rams had against Seattle. Like, these were absolute street fights out on the football field. It was awesome. And yet I could make a compelling case. We're talking about 1-2 plays that would have had the Rams playing in the Super Bowl. And by the way, I think, you know, LA would have beaten and probably smashed, you know, New England like Seattle did. So all of these little moments that add up and stack over time, you know, might be the difference. But I'm with you. It was probably a different, you know, probably the right time for Buffalo to go and make a change with McDermott and go to Joe Brady. But I'd also argue, like, there's a lot of pressure right now on Joe to try to get over the hump. Sean McDermott, you know, you look at collectively what he was able to do in Buffalo. I mean, it was a remarkable run, no Super Bowl clearly, and some exits in the postseason that you'd love to take back. But, you know, they were perennial power in the NFL for the last couple of years. And a lot of that is obviously because of him and what Josh has been able to do on the field. But I'm telling you, like, it is really difficult to win these biggest games, and these guys are compensated to do so, and they have to be special. But you're right. You hit the nail on the head. Like, this is the time. Like, Josh has got to deliver right now. And this is a great opportunity for him.
AFC to NFC. You mentioned 2 teams a minute ago. One I think isn't getting enough talk. One I think might be getting maybe a little too much talk, both in the NFC West. I don't feel like we're giving the Seahawks their flowers quite enough. Now, you're right. Things fell well for them, but they dominated and won the Super Bowl. I feel like they're a bit of an afterthought as a defending Super Bowl champion. And then we've got the Rams, who could have maybe been in the Super Bowl last year. And I know they're a loaded team, and they should be the favorite. I get it. But we're kind of talking about this Rams team who didn't make the Super Bowl last year as a super team that hasn't really done it. Now, I know Stafford won a Super Bowl a few years ago, but there's a lot here. And I sometimes feel when we build these teams up in the preseason, there's always 1 or 2 teams where that air comes out of the balloon. And I don't know if that's going to be the Rams, but I kind of feel like they're getting a lot of hype, and maybe Seattle's not getting enough, which is probably fine with Mike Macdonald.
Yeah. Look, Seattle fans, you know, actually last year during the college football season, I was working with Michael Bumpus, who used to be a Washington State wide receiver, actually played in Seattle as well, but he does a radio show in Seattle. So every Saturday we're talking about the Seahawks, and he'd be like, Yammer, how come you guys don't talk more about Seattle? And I'm like, I know, man, I'm trying. And there's a chip on the shoulder. And then sure enough, they make the run and they win the Super Bowl. And it's like, like the national media, what are you guys doing? You're not paying attention to everyone. This little old team in the Pacific Northwest just absolutely dominated the Patriots in the Super Bowl and are a really good team. There's a couple things at play. One, the Kubiak thing, you mentioned Kenneth Walker. Walker aside, what Kubiak was able to do with Sam, I think is really special and unique. And I think that's why there's buzz around Vegas. When you lose your offensive coordinator, we've seen other teams where that's been a little bit of an issue. I think that's a red flag. I'm not saying that they can't overcome it. I'm not even suggesting it with JSN and Sam is going to come into the season more confident than he's ever played in his entire life coming off that Super Bowl. Do they deserve more credit? Yeah, you're probably right. But I would argue, I look on paper and I know it's just paper, but Bill, tell me the team better on paper right now than the Rams are. Like, I don't even know. I don't know the weak point of that team at this point. Like, I look at this roster and I just say, what's even their identity? Sometimes you go, oh, it's on the defensive side. Oh, it's on the offensive side.
Yeah.
I mean, pick your side. Like, and AD, by the way, might be coming back. Like, you're talking about a future Hall of Famer that might be lined up with Myles Garrett. Like, Aaron Donald could roll out of bed because Garrett is on that field and get double-digit sacks. I mean, it's going to be bonkers. About watching the McDuffie more than most because of your, watching Kansas City. Like, that secondary is going to be so much better. McDuffie is one of my favorite players in the league. And then we haven't even talked about the reigning MVP with Stafford and Puka and all these dudes. Like, I think that's why it's so. The storyline around that team, man, is remarkable. And the worst part about this, and I'm going to say this because I know I'm on Salt Lake. I'm in Salt Lake City right now on the radio, and I wouldn't say this on Los Angeles radio, but it's true. The fan base, obviously, and I was around Utah football, and like, it's unbelievable. It's awesome. The Musts are rocking. Those are fans. And in Los Angeles, when you have a team that looks like this with the Rams, what's going to happen when like the Niners come to LA? It's going to be red inside SoFi Stadium. And I think that's like the disappointing thing. Like, I think there's a lack of appreciation even in their own darn city for what this team is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Though both those teams that play in that stadium, the Charger fan base kind of stayed in San Diego. There's a little bit of a fan base there that's growing. Yeah. And the Rams, maybe because they were gone for so long, it doesn't feel like that fan base is totally bought in either.
It's not. They're not. I was leaving the studio yesterday, and if there's a preseason game it just is a lot different.
Yeah.
Let me just say this, like, the Chargers are rolling up for a preseason game and it's quiet. I mean, I expected more traffic. Like, was I smiling on my way to get home because I got home in a reasonable time? Hell yeah. But I'm thinking to myself, how is it not just bonkers out here? Because in most NFL cities, it would be.
Thursday afternoon, you should be taking the swag chopper home. Avoid that LA traffic. Maybe Kevin Sumlin can loan it to. I don't think he probably has proprietorial rights of the swag chopper anymore since he's not a head coach, right?
No question, although I think it's going to be awesome to use this reference now when LeBron is living in New York City and commuting to Philadelphia. So he's using the swag copter. I like it. I'm going to start using that again on NBA TV when we start talking hoops.
I think you should, because maybe he bought it at a really discounted rate from Kevin Sumlin after his limited use of it at the University of Arizona. Where can we tell her? Obviously, NFL Network, kind of Monday through Thursday stuff, but where else can we see you right now, Yammer?
Yeah, a ton of the NFL channel, which once again, if you got a connected TV or YouTube or, Amazon Prime or NFL Plus, that's going to actually be the bulk of my work.
Okay.
I got a ton of stuff around college football on Saturdays with the CW. I'm just working out my schedule now with NBA TV. So there's a lot, and it's going to be awesome, man. Like, I honestly am so jacked up, and I hope you're doing the radio show again pretty soon. It'd be awesome to catch up with you and OC and do the whole thing.
Yeah, it'd be great. NBA TV, do they fly you to Atlanta, or you just do it out of L.A.?
No, it's Atlanta. When Turner lost, the NBA rights, NBA TV's no longer down there. So our production, talk about the best case scenario. I'm here. I love hoops. My first TV job was actually NBA TV, so it was pretty cool to go back. But they're in Burbank, so
Oh, nice.
I do the drive to Burbank. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's putting
No
miles
swag
up.
copter needed.
No swag chopper needed there to get into the valley. All right, hey,
Yeah,
thanks so much for doing this today.
you're the
It's
best, man.
great catching up,
100%.
and again, have fun during college football season of the CW, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, no, and seriously, man, I really do. I miss these conversations. I miss OC, and I really do miss being in Salt Lake City as much as I used to get there when I was with the Pac-12. Like, it's an awesome town. It's still one of my favorites. So every time I see Utah football or anything related to it, I always smile. So looking forward to a good season this year.
Thanks, Yammer. Mike Yam with us here on the Sean O'Connell Show today, here on Utah's #1 sports talk. I love that guy. He's just always upbeat, always positive, and such a talent. You can hear. I mean, he does NFL stuff. He does college football stuff. He's doing NBA TV stuff. Living the life, Mike Yam. Taking a quick break. We'll come back on the other side. Tell you what they're doing on the PGA Tour this week at FedEx, St. Jude, and more coming up right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Big thank you again to Mike Yam. We're going to this is going to be a short segment because I've got Chris Camrani coming on the other side. They're playing the BMW Championship on the PGA Tour this week, part of the FedEx Cup playoffs. And BMW Championship. J.J. Spawn, your round 2 leader, 4 under through 12, 10 under for the tournament. He's got a 3-shot lead over Patrick Cantlay. Rory McIlroy and Matthew Fitzpatrick also 3 shots back at 7 under par. So is Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland is a Jayhawk like myself. He went to the University of Kansas. He's a little bit younger than I am. Actually, quite a bit younger than I am. Actually, not that much, but maybe 7-10 years. But he's a great story because he was diagnosed with a brain tumor about a year and a half ago, and he didn't know what was wrong. And he was passing out, dizzy spells, vision issues, all of that stuff. And I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was 60 Minutes, or maybe it was one of those 30 E60s, but somebody did a really good piece on it. He's beaten that back, got that cancer and that brain tumor in remission, and he's doing well again on tour. And it's good to I root for good stories like that, and happy for him. Our tour update, by the way, brought to you by our friends at You Went to Golf by Worldwide Golf. Take advantage of their 50% bonus trade-in on all their new inline golf clubs. Browse hundreds of new inline drivers, fairway irons, wedges, putters. 50% off bonus in trade-in value, all at You Went to Golf. So, yeah. Camerani's going to come up here. A couple of more text messages. I was asking floor and ceiling for the Utes or the Cougs or the Aggies or whoever your favorite college football team happens to be. This one comes in. Texter 4234 says, "Hey, Bill, so glad to hear you back again. I would have to say, for the first time ever, I feel like my Cougars could be 12-0. I've never thought they had as good a team as they do now. I think 9-3 would be the floor." Well, you know my policy. I don't say anybody 12-0, but you're right. BYU has a very good team. I've said this, again, one man's opinion. I think the rivalry game this year could be, it could be as big a rivalry game as we have had in a long, and maybe for what's on the line to play for, maybe ever, because I think Utah's got a very good chance of being 8-0 going into that game, and I think BYU's got a very good chance of being 7-1, maybe 8-0, because the only really, really tough game on their schedule is Notre Dame, and that's at home. I shouldn't say that. Arizona's a good team, too. They play Arizona early. So Utah's got Houston, but if I was saying it today, I would say Utah's 8-0, BYU 7-1 going into that game at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and that could very well be a play-in game because Texas Tech's schedule is soft. It is. They don't have to play Utah. They don't have to play BYU. They've got all their really tough games. I think Houston, maybe Arizona, are in Lubbock. So I think Tech's probably going to get there unless the Hammond thing, unless Will Hammond's not himself. But that game is going to be huge on November the 7th at Rice. I know that's 2.5 months away, but you're not wrong. It's a good team that Kalani Sitake has. So Kevin says, "Hey, Bill, ceiling is 9-3. Floor is 6-6. Replacing the entire offensive line and a first-year head coach just gives me an uneasy feeling about the season." That's fair, Kevin. That is fair, and that's why they play the games. But I'll go back to the fact that there was talent. They're replacing the offensive line, but 3 guys that are potential starters have been in the program and have been coached very high level by Jim Harding before, and now by Jordan Gross. So they're not bereft of talent. They just don't have a lot of guys that have started a ton of games, if that makes sense, but plenty of guys that have been in the program, and I get it. I don't think you have to be uneasy about Morgan Scalley. He's been preparing for this moment for a long, long time. And again, I'll just go back to the fact that the early season schedule is very manageable for Utah. That gives you time to get reps and kind of get everybody together and on the same page. Second half of the schedule is difficult. So keep those text messages coming in. 877-353-0700. And maybe, just maybe, an hour from now, if any of you would like to chat like adults do, voice to voice. I was going to say face to face, but you're not in studio. Maybe we'll do it old school. Maybe we'll throw it back and make it a throwback Friday and actually take some phone calls. James is going to have to test the telephone and see if those phone lines even work still in there. We'll think about that an hour from now. Coming up next, though, my friend Chris Camrani from The Athletic on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in on a Friday. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hour 2 on a Friday. Ryle's sitting in today for OC. He'll be back next week. 13 days away from college football kicking off. Utes and Vandals on Thursday night, September the 3rd up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Pre-game coverage here, but we'll begin at 3. Kickoff at 7. I'll have the call of that as the Morgan Scalley era debuts. Our next guest is covered Morgan Scalley is an assistant coach. Now he kind of covers a little bit from time to time. He's based here in Salt Lake City, of course. Writes for The Athletic. He'll write about just about anything and everything. Sometimes I'll see soccer pop up. Sometimes I'll see a little football pop up. You never know what Chris Camrani is going to write about, but he joins us right now to talk about all of it. Christopher, how are things?
Things are great. How are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to talk to you. What's going on?
Oh, I'm just glad we got in the DeLorean and went back in time so we can have this conversation.
I know. This is fantastic. I reached out to you. I just thought I hadn't talked to you in forever. Congratulations to you and the wife on baby number 2 in the Camrani household. That's fantastic. You've got one of each. Everybody doing well?
Juggling, but doing a very poor job of it. But, yes, everyone is happy and healthy. But as you know, through lived experience, it's we'll lean on the football cliche of just got to win the day. And if we can win the day, we'll be all right.
Yeah, we can't look ahead to next week, Chris. We just got to live in the day today. There's no handbook for any of this. You call lots of audibles, and you just do the best you can. And if at the end of the day the kids are still breathing and sleeping in their beds, you guys have done your job.
It's a spread attack. You know, our scheme is kind of just open concept with really the ability to do anything and everything at any time.
Well, as long as you and your wife are very flexible, kind of like what Whittingham said, you can't have a plan that takes years and years to learn, and you got to be plug and play. As long as you and the wife are plug and play with these kids, you should be good.
Yeah, I mean, we know what type of human we want to recruit and try to develop, and that's all you got to do, man. You just got to try to develop them as best you can every single day.
Well, here's what I'll tell you though: you got to recruit them every day though, because they may go in the portal on you, and they end up down the street at the neighbor's house because the neighbors have better treats and better dinner.
Am I going to sound like a terrible parent / coach that I'll be like, I'll take that any day of the week?
Hey, I want people that want to be part of the Camrani team. And if they don't want to be part of the Camrani team, we wish them the best and we'll let them move on.
Yeah, it's like with the transfer portal announcements. With that being said, if that's what they're going to do, so be it.
Please respect my privacy at this time.
Exactly. And my decision.
At this time. As we said, 13 days out, and you're not on the day in and day out beat anymore. You kind of watch things from 10,000 feet. What are you most interested in or intrigued by with year one of Morgan Scalley at Utah?
I'm gonna audible on you and not go offensive line because I think that's the easiest answer. I think it's just a brand new coaching staff. I mean, I think it cannot be understated just how difficult it will be to replace the continuity and the familiarity of a staff that knew each other pretty much inside and out. And granted, you do have guys in new spots. Obviously, Morgan was the defensive coordinator for a long time. Colton Swan takes his position. But you're also talking about bringing in more than a handful of new coaches, including a brand new offensive coordinator. And as we saw during the Kyle Whittingham era, it takes time when you're putting together brand new staffs. I think what Utah has going for it is kind of the benefit of the doubt because they've been so successful for such a long time. I think a lot of that rode and rides on the clout of Kyle Whittingham's accomplishments at Utah. But Morgan assembled a brand new staff with a lot of new faces, and it's easy for us to sit back and say they went to the portal, got a bunch of great receivers. Utah's been thin at that position. They bring back Devin Dampier. They bring back Bert Ficklin. Wayshawn Parker's back. But it's so hard to understand what it will look like because so much of this is brand new. Granted, the defense will stay the same, but you're also throwing in so many new faces into new positions. So that's what I'm most interested in. It's no offense to the Vandals, the mighty Vandals of Idaho, but how is Morgan and his staff going to handle a 2-minute drill at the end of the first half to try to get at least 3 points. You know, like it's things like that where we just have no proof of concept yet because Morgan's never done this before.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think, and I said this talking about the players, but I think it kind of goes for the coaches too. Utah's got a pretty manageable non-conference and even early conference schedule, and they don't face a ranked team till later on with Houston. And now it gets tougher in late October and November, but I think from a continuity standpoint on the field, that certainly helps things a little bit, especially with those trenches that you talked about, offensive and defensive lines. But I think it helps with the coaching a little bit too. You're not playing Notre Dame or Florida State or USC in a non-conference, and you don't have a murderer's row early. Again, Iowa State, Colorado, Kansas, and the Big 12 are Big 12 teams, but these are programs that are down a little bit. So if there's any, to your point, time to adjust a little bit, it's with a kind of an early manageable schedule to, kind of get a rhythm or work some of those kinks out a little bit.
I might be the only one who's upset that we didn't get a Bronco Mendenhall Kyle Whittingham rematch, which was on tap, but I digress. The Big 12 is just it's an open ball game for anyone, Bill. Like, I honestly think you're going to see teams who are picked to be bad who will be very good, and I think you'll see teams who were picked to be very good and they will be bad. That's just what we've learned in this conference the last few years. There is no, and I'll go even further to say, I don't think Texas Tech will be as good as everyone thinks they'll be this year, or nearly as good as they were last year. They're dealing with their own myriad, issues of stuff. It does help that Utah's schedule is quote unquote manageable, but I would behoove everyone to enter all of these games a little objectively, because you don't know how these teams are going to stack up, because you have so much turnover in the portal area. You have so many new coaches and coaching staffs at the helm. Nobody in their right mind would have envisioned a couple of years ago that Houston would be considered one of the best teams in the conference. They're top 25 team. That's how quickly things can turn around. So to your credit and to your point, Utah does have a manageable conference schedule, but I don't think there's going to be any gimme games this year in this conference. I just don't.
I agree. And Texas Tech has a question at the most important position. He's a talented kid, as we saw here in Salt Lake last year, but he's coming off an ACL. And if they felt super confident about him, they wouldn't have gone through probably the entire Sorsby situation. So what happens with Will Hammond's going to tell a lot on what the Red Raiders do this year. And I agree with you. I've said all along, I think Texas Tech is probably ranked, and again, rankings don't mean anything with the playoff rankings, but having them at 12 feels a little high for me right now. And I think everybody else is kind of properly placed. BYU mid-teens, Utah late teens to around 20. I think Houston's going to be good. But to that point, I think Arizona's going to be good. I think Kansas State could be pretty good this year, depending on how Colin Klein comes in, but he knows that situation. So I agree with you. I don't think there's a lot of layups in this league.
Well, and just a tiny wrinkle from a breaking news perspective, Stuart Mandel reporting that former Boston College and Florida State quarterback Thomas Castellanos may end up landing at Texas Tech if all this injunction stuff, sorts itself out. So, Castellanos is a proven veteran. I wouldn't say he's going to necessarily blow the doors off anybody talent-wise, but I don't know what Will Hammond's ACL recovery looks like. I will say he looked like a Heisman Trophy candidate against the Utes last year.
He did.
But it's just so funny, man, because for so long we always joked about the Pac-12 just being like a coin flip league, being like, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm sure 2 or 3 of these teams are always going to be in the mix, but we have no idea about the rest. It's so funny that Utah and BYU moved to a different conference together with more teams, and it's the exact same thing.
Well, and I think to use an old Pac-12 analogy where we used to say it cannibalizes itself, I think the Big 12 could do that this year. I don't know if there's 7 or 8 teams that could win the league, but I know there's 7 or 8 teams that could win on a given Saturday or given Saturdays and certainly upset the top of the league.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's why I said there's no gimmies. You can even take a team like Colorado that a lot of people are writing off. Deion Sanders, to his credit, I think made one of the most underrated coaching hirings in the offseason by hiring Brendan Marion as his OC. You're going to face these teams where you'll be, man, they've been bad the last couple of years. It'll be okay. I don't know, a Friday night game in Boulder?
Yeah.
Not very easy, not a very easy place to play. It's just there is so much parity in this league, and there's so much, I think, unproven talent in terms of coaching staff, players, that it's really hard to kind of wrap our head around how this thing will look come mid-October.
Chris Camrani with us from The Athletic. To your point about Castellanos, we're seeing more of this. There was another list that came out this morning, and a former Utah player was on that list, Blake Cotton. Some of these guys that are now eligible to join teams because they're not on NFL rosters and they've gotten extra years. I mean, Greg Sankey speaking out about it publicly this week, the commissioner of the SEC. Do we need to start getting – I mean, I know we do. I know it's probably a rhetorical question, but how soon do we begin starting to get some of these guardrails? And, I think most teams aren't going to bring people in, but there's always going to be a Texas Tech of the world that's got cash laying around. They'll throw it at somebody and bring them in. I mean, do we need some guardrails on this? Are we a little out of control? I think that's maybe a rhetorical question.
It is, and I think so. I will say I think the Protect College Sports Act, the PCSA, which is a bipartisan bill, would, I think, honestly solve a lot of these issues. But as we saw, it's taking a break in D.C. I think a lot of people are kind of giving it a 50% chance of passing through both the House and the Senate to go into law. But even this morning, like, everything, Bill, is like a literal hour-to-hour type deal because a federal judge, ruled on the Colorado ruling and issued a stay. So now all of these guys are in a holding pattern once again. The folks that were trying to come back that maybe got cut in preseason and training camp, they can't necessarily participate yet. So we're literally existing in an hour-to-hour basis, which is silly. It is. I just think like somebody has to grab this thing by the scruff of the neck and be like, these are the rules. Let's figure this out. Because to go from, all these guys are trying to come back, they're going to start practicing with the teams, to, now there's a stay, invoked by a judge at some federal level. Okay, now they have to wait. It is so kind of helter-skelter that nobody really knows what to do. But in the meantime, it also makes it more interesting, I think, for the casual fan. But I think so many people are getting tired of having to learn the legalese necessary to keep up. Honestly, like me, I'm not a very bright person. My head is spinning trying to learn all of these legalese concepts because it is very difficult to keep up with.
Well, because you and I think about these things, we have no power to act on them, but we think and talk about them. Who grabs it by the scruff of the neck? We know it's not going to be the NCAA. So is it going to have to be the Power Four leagues coming together, commissioners doing it? Who grabs this thing by the scruff of the neck and says, this is how we're going to do it, or we're not going to do it this way anymore?
I mean, I think the fact that both the Big Ten and SEC supported the PCSA is a huge boon for that bill. But again, like, in order for it to get through legislation at both levels, it's still got a ways to go. And honestly, I think if this thing doesn't get through, I have no idea. I mean, you're going to get back to square one, and at that point, who knows what it's going to look like.
Who's the best team in college football, Chris? Because the way we were talking about the Big 12 a minute ago is kind of how I feel about, like, the top 7, top 8, top 10 of college football this year. I think for the first time in quite a while, and maybe it hasn't been quite a while, but I don't know if we have a definitive best team, but I think we've got a group of 7 or 8 or 10 teams.
I would say Ohio State. I think that's an easy, low-hanging fruit answer, but I think they have the most talent in the country, and talent usually wins out. The quarterback wasn't all that great last year, but does he need to be in 2026? Probably against the top-tier teams, but I'll just always roll with the team with the most talent. I think Jeremiah Smith is a Heisman Trophy contender. He's the most physically imposing / talented receiver I can remember seeing in a very long time. But again, like last year, like obviously they weren't good enough to beat Indiana. So I'll go Ohio State, but I do think this is the Big Ten's world right now. If you were going to ask me to list off the teams that I think are the best in the country, I think I would probably go in my top 5, 3 or 4 would be from the Big Ten.
You know what I found funny? Polls again don't mean anything anymore. They're fun for us to talk about, but it's the poll at the end of October, the college football playoff poll, that means something. But when the coaches poll came out a couple of weeks ago, Indiana's ranked 6th, but they got the second most first place. They got 14 first place votes, but somehow managed to end up 6th in the coaches poll. You think there might be a few guys out there that are a little tired of Curt Cignetti?
A little bit. I'm not.
I'm not either. I think he's great.
I mean, I just think I think like he is the exact type of personality and like coach that the sport needed to kind of evacuate itself from kind of that old guard existing only in the upper echelon. I mean, they lost a bunch of talent, Bill. I mean, like, let's be honest. Like, Fernando Mendoza, Heisman Trophy winner, starting tailback, bunch of players on the defensive side of the ball. Questions about Josh Hoover coming in, who has a boatload of talent, but does Curt Cignetti's, plug and play style of transfer at quarterback continue to be, successful at the level that it has been? I don't know. I mean, I would assume so, because just look at the last 2 years. I mean, nobody in their right mind ever envisioned Indiana not only making back-to-back playoff appearances, but then to cap off the last year going undefeated and winning a national title.
I love it. Cignetti reminds me a lot of Urban Meyer. I was just telling some people the other day, I was in a meeting. I was lucky enough to cover Steve Spurrier in the mid to late 90s when Steve Spurrier was at the height of his power. We don't need 50 Steve Spurrier, Curt Cignetti, Urban Meyers, but 2 or 3 well-placed around the country are great. Like a few, what was it, a month or two ago? Sarkisian, the coach at Texas, took a couple of shots at fellow SEC schools, and then he backs away from them like that 15 minutes later. It's like, come on. You said it, stand on it. You're at Texas. You got nothing to fear, whatever it might happen to be. I think a few of those guys, we lack some of that in college football today.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to fall on like the overused cliche, like we need villains. I wouldn't classify them as villains. I would just classify them as like characters / people being unafraid to speak their mind. Like the first guy that comes to mind is Mike Leach. Like Mike's gone. Like Mike was the epitome of that. It's like Mike would be willing to be honest and forthright about pretty much anything at any time. Curt Cignetti, similar cut from that cloth. I mean, it's funny you brought up Steve Spurrier because like whenever people ask me like my all-time favorite interview, like if I have to list 3, it was when Steve Spurrier just called me back randomly for a story like a few years ago, and just like I was just like, man, like this is not real life, because it just was like I'd known the guy for a very long time and just was totally unafraid to just talk that the same way he used to all those years ago. And we just need those guys, honestly, because for a sport that is so, I think, honestly, often overwrought with this, sense of paranoia and giving the other team bulletin board material, blah, blah, blah. No, man, like lean into the fact that if you think your team's good enough, you can back it up, and then you can go beat him on Saturday.
He was so great. His press conferences every week they were a luncheon, and you'd have every TV station in the state of Florida. Miami would drive up. There would be 75 or 80 people at a press conference. It was unbelievable. And I was talking to Brian Johnson a couple years ago when Brian was at Florida with Dan Mullen. He said Spurrier just had an office. He was never there, but he would just like pop into like quarterback or offensive coaches meetings and just sit in. And then he'd just walk up to the whiteboard and say, a couple of ball plays I thought might work for you boys, draw them up, and then walk out of the room. Brian said Spurrier was the best.
No offense to Matthew McConaughey at Texas, but Steve Spurrier is the original minister of culture.
Absolutely, positively. There's no doubt about it. Hey, before I let you go, I wanted to kind of, because you're a guy that's kind of a big picture sport guy. I've lived here 25 years. You've lived here a long time too. Has Salt Lake City kind of subtly, quietly, out of nowhere become a great sports city in this country with all that we have here, with what we've already had before and what might be on the way here in the near future?
I mean, I think you'd make an argument it always has been.
Yeah.
So, honestly, like it's just a matter of like the growth has been so exponential that I think people are taking notice. Like I always would find any chance I get to rib my Utah friends, my BYU friends, my Jazz friends. I'm like, you guys complain about your teams? Go be a fan in Cleveland, Ohio, or go somewhere where like all you've experienced is mediocre pain for like 3 or 4 decades. The fact that Utah and BYU have been as good as they have been, BYU going back to the 80s, Utah back to the early 2000s, the Jazz making the playoffs a billion years in a row, RSL winning an MLS Cup title, like it is so wild that fans in Utah find a way to complain about stuff because their teams have been so good and in the mix for so long that I think they get this sense that like they're jaded. I'm like, man, like if your team has a puncher's chance 75% way through any season, that means you're better than most teams. And every team here at the pro or college level has pretty much been in that mix, maybe outside of the Jazz the last few years.
Right.
But and you add the Mammoth in year 2, make the playoffs. Like there's noise gathering around Major League Baseball coming here. Like I just think we're seeing a significant spike in folks from out of state moving here and realizing like, oh man, like this place is, 1, it's cool. 2, their teams are good. And 3, it's a great place to live.
You've got the 2 flagship college institutions, Utah and BYU, that are both back together in the same league, Power League, and in the biggest sport that matters, they matter. They're top 25 programs. You've got the Jazz, who have always been here, an NBA franchise, that are now being run like a regular NBA franchise by Ryan Smith, and I think they're on their way back. I don't know if they'll contend, but they're going to be back. Real Salt Lake in Major League Soccer is here. I think the Mammoth being here now for coming into 3 years has added a little bit more gravitas to this market. People see hockey here, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, okay. You mentioned Major League Baseball. The Olympics are coming back. We've got the Winter Classic on the way this year. Chris, this is a real – I mean, it's not – there's always going to be the big 2 or 3, the Chicagos, the Bostons, the Phillies, the New Yorks, the LAs. But this sports market is – it doesn't take a backseat to many anymore.
Well, especially out west.
Yeah,
like
out west especially.
If we're talking about being a well-rounded market, which includes the success of college football programs, it would be hard to find one that's bigger in terms of having 2 flagship institutions. Like you said, like you think of like you got Oregon, but I would say Oregon and Oregon State aren't at the same level as Utah and BYU. Seattle, you got UW, but Seattle, it's hard, man. You have all the pro teams that are always going to take up all that oxygen. LA, no. Bay Area, no way. Arizona, no. I mean, I just think like honestly, it's up there if you're talking about having such a kind of well-rounded sports portfolio from a professional and collegiate point of view. Fascinated to see what happens with the baseball, man. I mean, my baseball colleagues at The Athletic have been doing a great job reporting about like how much real interest there is. And it seems like the folks at Major League Baseball offices are seriously taking a hard look at what Salt Lake could offer should they ever get to an expansion level.
I just think everything lines up well. Utah's done its homework. They've got their ducks in a row. They've got ownership. They've got location. They've got money for stadium. They've got emerging market. I don't know what box Salt Lake wouldn't check. Maybe spring weather, but you're in Denver. You know, you're in some cold weather. Detroit is in Chicago aren't exactly great in April either. So I just think it's lined up pretty well. I don't know, but if I had to hazard a guess, I'd probably say Nashville and Salt Lake have to be the leaders, wouldn't you?
I would think so. And then that ultimately leaves us to argue about the most important thing is what do you name the team? What do you name the team, Bill?
It's a good question, Chris. I haven't given it a lot of thought, but whatever name you decide to come up with, make sure somebody else doesn't have a patent or some sort of licensing on it so you have to go back and do it again.
I know nobody will ask me, and this is maybe just because I'm a nostalgic person, and since we're already in the DeLorean, you got to go Trappers, man.
I love the Trappers.
Have the all-time professional record for consecutive wins in baseball history, which is 1 billion years in this country. An amazing story. Bill Murray tending bar at Duffy's. It's it, man. It's it. Like you can miss me with all of the, the elk and the moose and all that stuff. Like it's the Trappers.
Well, I'm glad we fired up the DeLorean a couple of times today. Glad the flux capacitor was working at 1.21 gigawatts. You got to go back to tending to those children and make sure they don't enter the portal on you anytime soon.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you, man.
See you, Chris. Chris Camrani of The Athletic. Look for his stuff there. It's still one of my favorite daily go-tos. Whether Chris is riding or not, there's so many great riders. If you liked soccer this summer, I'm not sure anybody in the world had better World Cup coverage on a daily basis than what they did in The Athletic, and it's great to catch up with Chris. I can't believe we're halfway home already here on a Friday. Going to go back, grab a couple of text messages from you, some news and notes of the day. I think we have to take a daily dump at some point in time. We're going to have Riley Nelson in about an hour, and maybe we'll take some phone calls as well coming up. All right, here on the Sean O'Connell Show on a Friday. Bill Riley sitting in on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Yeah, daily dump time here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in today. Part of our daily dump will be our PGA Tour update. BMW Championship, round 2. J.J. Spahn's got a one-shot lead over Patrick Cantlay right now. He's 9 under. Cantlay is 8 under. Cantlay's done for the day. Spahn wrapping up for the day. And you've got a couple of golfers a shot back. You've got McIlroy and Im and Woodland and Fitzpatrick at 7 under. So a pretty tight round 2 right now at the BMW Championships as they play on the FedEx Tour, FedEx playoffs right now on the PGA Tour. Boy, oh boy, what is the deal right now in the NBA? It feels like you're watching one of those house flipping shows on like HGTV where somebody buys a house, then they flip it, and then 2 months later they sell it for a couple of $100,000 more. American businessman Mark Stad has just completed a deal to become the controlling owner and largest shareholder of the Minnesota Timberwolves and the WNBA's Minnesota Lynx by buying the majority of co-owner Mark Lore's stake in the two franchises. The deal's worth about $4.5 billion. Yeah, not quite the Lakers, but still a pretty penny to pay. Lore will retain a minority investment in the teams, while co-owner Alex Rodriguez has decided to increase his equity stake, though it's not exactly clear how much A-Rod is going to buy into. So, yeah. This has become kind of the norm. Some people are doing it because they have to. Some people are doing it because they want to, and this sounds like a want to in Minnesota. But, yeah, another NBA team is changing ownership, or at least majority ownership stake right now. A couple of other news and notes from the day in sports today. Bryson DeChambeau hoping to live is given one more shot. Live Tour feels like it's on life support right now. Just when you thought they had endless money, those Saudis, they've decided maybe to pull the plug just a little bit. But, yeah, that's where they are. NFL, we've got a little preseason football coming up tonight. You've got the Jets in Pittsburgh. You've got Carolina in Jacksonville, Green Bay, and Denver all coming up tonight. NFL Network and ESPN Unlimited is where you'll find some of those. My Chiefs are playing tomorrow night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa. NFL preseason is meaningless. All the key players that mean anything whatsoever do not play, and that includes the star players. So we'll see what happens with NFL football tonight. They're too big an investment. You cannot afford to have an injury happen to one of your star players in the preseason, and that's why they do it. That's your Daily Dump presented by Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Air here on the Sean O'Connell Show. On Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Bill Riley here with you today. I was asking the question earlier in the show today, what do you see for your favorite team as the floor and the ceiling this year? Utah football's 13 days from kicking off against the Idaho Vandals. What do you see as the Utah floor from a record standpoint and ceiling from a record standpoint? I said 9-3 for the floor, 11-1 for the ceiling for Utah. I'm very bullish on the Utes this year. But if you're a Cougar fan, and I've had a couple of Cougar fans sound off on the text line today, Aggie fan, SC fan, Ohio State fan, whatever you might be a fan of, give me the floor and ceiling for your respective team. 877-353-0700 is your text line to reach the program today. That's 877-353-0700 to get you in and on board today. Just a couple of other quick thoughts. The AP Top 25 came out earlier this week. Utah at 21, BYU tied for 14. I think both of those are fair rankings in the preseason. They still had Texas Tech, the AP did, at about number 12. That feels high for me, and I've said this the entire offseason. I think Tech's probably somewhere in that 12 to 15 range. I think BYU's probably somewhere in that 13 to 17 range. And I thought Utah somewhere between about 15 and 20. 21 was about right. And that's where the rankings have them. Houston was also in there, and the Cougars were in at number 23. That's 4 Big 12 teams who were ranked, nobody in the top 10. But again, I don't know that you can make a case for that right now. You play the games on the field. By the time we hit October and November, there could be a very good chance there could be a couple of Big 12 teams in the top 10. But right now, I don't think you can make that case. Arizona and TCU just missed out. I think both those teams will be good. I think another sneaky good team this year, just keep an eye on them. I think that there's a big swath here for Kansas State. They don't have a super tough schedule. They've got a first-year head coach, but Colin Klein is a former it's a little bit like the Scally situation at Utah. The difference is Klein was at Texas A&M the last 2 years as offensive coordinator, but before that he was on staff. I think they've got enough talent and toughness there. I'm not a big Avery Johnson fan. I don't think they keep waiting for him to become something I'm not sure he is, and that's a guy that can throw the ball very well. I haven't seen that in 3 years of football out of Avery Johnson, but he's a good college football player. He can run it well, and they could be a little bit of a, I don't think, get to Dallas surprise team, but if they finish third or fourth and ruin somebody else's chances, it wouldn't surprise me. Plus, I don't think K-State has to play. I know they don't have to play Utah. I don't think they play BYU either. So just somebody to keep an eye on. But Ohio State's won, and Camerani said, yeah, I'll bet on them right now. 5 teams got first-place votes. And Ohio State could very easily be that team. Here's what I'm going to say, and it's going to sound weird because I'm not a huge fan of the program, but I am a huge fan of the coach. That's Oregon. Dan Lanning seems to have everything you could possibly want or need. They have a lot of guys return. They of course, always shop in the portal. They always do a great job in the transfer portal. But they've got a star quarterback who might be most people are talking about him as the number one guy. He or Arch Manning. Dante Moore is his name, although many Utah fans will remember Dante Moore's debut as a collegian, and he just got made to look silly against Utah at Rice-Eccles Stadium. I think it was back in 24. 23 or 24. Anyway. Dan Lanning, I think, is a fantastic coach. And Oregon feels to me like they're absolutely loaded. I don't know that there's a definitive great powerhouse, a number one, bet the farm on them to win it team this year. Last year it was Indiana, and they proved it. They went 16-0. First team to go undefeated, I think, since LSU did back in 2019. And maybe Cignetti has it again. We'll see if the Hoover kid's an upgrade for them at quarterback this year. Mendoza was pretty special, but their wide receiver room is loaded. They're good. But a team that I'm keeping my eye on at the very top is Oregon, because it's felt like Lanning has been close. And I like his style. I do. I think Dan Lanning's a terrific coach. But you just wonder if it's not now with the perceived preseason number one quarterback maybe in the NFL draft, loaded at skill positions, loaded on defense. We'll see what happens. But they're a team I'm keeping an eye on right now, too. By the way, I mentioned the Mandel thing earlier. He had Utah going 7-5 and 4-5 and 9th in the Big 12. I think that's, again, everybody entitled to it. I don't see a world where Utah goes 4-5 in conference. Could be wrong, but I don't see that. Athletic computer models, by the way, like Utah, 3rd in the Big 12. They're a plus 650 for bettors to win it. I think they gave them 7.9 wins. I think BYU had 8.5 wins, and Texas Tech, I think, had 10.3 wins. The athletic computer models give Utah a 7.5% chance to win the conference and a 15% chance to make the playoff. Preseason, those computer models change as the year goes along. And if you start your season 6-0 or 7-0 or maybe even 8-0, I will tell you those numbers will change quite a bit. 877-353-0700 if you want to jump in and on board today here on the Bill Riley Show. Oh, whoops. Sean O'Connell Show, hosted by Bill Riley. Again, I did it for 20 years. So sometimes old habits die hard. Sean O'Connell Show. Hit me up. We'll read some text messages coming up in just a few minutes. Get your thoughts on things. By the way, I asked Chris that question 20 minutes ago about this market, 15, 20 minutes ago. I stand back and observe sometimes, and this is not the same market I moved into 25 years ago. I moved here in 2001. I am a Utahn through and through. But this is a really, really, really good sports market now. Is it Chicago? No. Is it Boston or New York? No. But if you're talking about West, there may be some other markets that have more sports teams or maybe more established, like Los Angeles. But I don't consider L.A. to be a great sports market. Maybe it's a great Dodger or Laker market. But you heard Mike Yam even talking about it earlier. They've had the Rams and the Chargers there now each for, I mean, the Rams have been back for a bit, but the Chargers have been there 5 or 6 years. It just, they don't buy in. This market, it feels like people are all in on everything here. It's a much more, I should, when I say great sport, it's a passionate fan base and passionate market for sports. And to Chris's point, especially on the collegiate side, maybe because that's where our roots are here collegiately, and the sports stuff, the pro sports stuff all kind of came after. And I do like Camerani's idea of the Trappers. A little nostalgic, fits well, kind of fits with our history and landscape here too. Wouldn't be bad. So anyway, hit me up on the text line, 877-353-0700. And we'll read some text messages coming back on the other side. Riley Nelson's going to join us to talk some in-state football. Utes, Cougs, and Ags coming up at about 1:30 today on the program. Want to remind you, too, Road Home Apple Tree. Help Utah kids start school with confidence. Over 200 kids at the Road Home need your help with back-to-school supplies. And even though schools already began, it's not too late to help these kids out as they go back to school. Help them with their school supplies. Help them with their confidence. Nobody wants to go without supplies. Nobody wants to go without the clothes they need to go back to school. So whether it's clothes or shoes or backpacks or pencils or you name it, Trapper Keepers for you OGs out there, everybody wanted a Trapper Keeper. Donate now. Go to ESPN700sports.com, AppleTreeForKids.com as well, or Venmo Advocates Donations, at Advocates Donations to help kids going back to school this fall. Quick timeout. Back with some of your text messages, a couple of other news and notes of the day on a Friday. Bill Riley sitting in for Sean O'Connell today on the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. No OC today. Riles in for Sean. He's out on assignment. 13 days to kick off. A little over an hour remaining in the program today. A little news out of Fort Worth. Not good news if you're a Horned Frog fan. This speaks to the type of locker room I think you have, too. Again, just a snapshot. But TCU recently dismissed projected starting safety Jacob Fields. He's a senior, and apparently he assaulted a teammate in the locker room. That's according to the police department and a person familiar with the situation who spoke Thursday to The Athletic on the condition of anonymity. Fields, who transferred in from Louisiana Tech, was the co-defensive player of the year in Conference USA last year, was dismissed on Tuesday by TCU for a violation of team rules. 4 days earlier, apparently, last Friday, campus police were called to the TCU athletic facilities for an alleged aggravated assault that happened in the locker room. According to a heavily redacted incident report obtained by The Athletic, TCU's general manager told the responding officer that an assault took place in the locker room on August 13th at approximately 1:30 p.m. The report characterized the offense as an alleged aggravated assault with hands and feet or fists. Generally how it goes. Victim's name and identifying information were redacted except that he was a male. Well, yeah, if he's in the football locker room, there's a pretty good chance that that's probably the case. Officer recommended the victim contact the police for more comprehensive report, possibly filing any charges if the victim chose to do so. The alleged assailant was also not identified in the report, but a source familiar with the situation confirmed it was Fields, and there you go. So, anyway, that's a bit of a blow. Your starting safety, co-defensive player of the year in Conference USA last year, gets dismissed. But to me, that speaks of a bigger issue. I'm just telling you this right now. That wouldn't happen at Utah. Not in the locker room. That is a player-controlled and player-patrolled space. When you have a good locker room, I'm not saying dust-ups don't happen. But when you have to have an aggravated assault report, if it progresses all the way to the police, that's not a good look. It just is not a good look. I'm sure most locker rooms here and there will have a shoving match, words. It happens certainly on the field. But to have it escalate all the way up to the point where the police are called and they come to the facility to file a report, that's a tough look for Sonny Dykes' team and a tough look for TCU. All right, a couple of text messages, then we'll grab a break. Riley Nelson's going to join us at about 1:30 today to talk some ball. Jay says, hey, Bill, always great to hear you on the show. Well, thanks, Jay. I think Utah's floor is 8-4 and ceiling is 11-1. Unfortunately, they won't make the playoff if they don't win the conference. See, I'm not sure about that, though, this year, Jay. I think if you go 11-1 in the regular season, that means you're probably going to have beaten at least one or two ranked teams. I think they'll have a chance. I think this year, let's say you go 11-1 in the regular season and happen to lose. Just play that. Lose in the championship game to Tech. An 11-2 season in a Power 4 league, I think you're going to the playoff. Austin Burdett. Hey, Austin. Floor 11-1, ceiling 12-0. Well, go Utes. Austin, you've left very, very little room for anything else. Thank you. Text message from Caden in today. Caden says, ceiling 11-1, floor 10-2. We forget the offensive line got playing time last year when Utah was up big. I expect a lot from this team. That's something, Caden, you're right about that. There's a good chance that a handful of the starters were guys that have been in the program before. And those guys did play. Do they have starts? No. Some of them started the bowl game, but to your point, they have played. And they've been coached well, and they're veterans and they're older players. There's talent there. I'm telling you, I'm really not concerned with the Utah offensive line. Do I have sky-high expectations like we did a year ago? No. It's a different group. But I still think it's a really good and talented group. Text message from Juan Soto. Juan Soto. Shouldn't you be with the Mets, Juan? We miss your voice, Bill. Well, thank you, Juan. I appreciate that. Thank you. 877-353-0700. Taylor says floor 8-4, ceiling 10-2. Let's be realistic. Come on, guys. I didn't say you had to be realistic, Taylor. I was just simply asking people for their floors and ceilings. But I think your floor and ceiling are certainly realistic and within the realm of possibility. Connor in Syracuse. And we'll grab a break. Hey, Bill. The floor is 9-3. The ceiling is 11-1. Love the weapons on offense with a healthy Dampier. Wayshawn will have the breakout year, and the offensive line will be better than people think. My only question right now is defensive line. Can Kafusi stay healthy? Who steps up on the edge? My official prediction, though, is 10-2 with losses to Arizona and TCU. Tough stretch, but we sneak into the championship game. Go Utes. Well, I'm with you there, Connor. If you guys listened earlier, I said 9-3 floor, 11-1 ceiling. I think your questions are legitimate too. Here's what I'll say about the edge players. Both Lance Holtzclaw and Cash Dillon have had good fall camps. Both those guys were primarily backups a year ago because you had John Henry Daly on one side and Logan Fano on the other side. But I think both those guys have chances to be outstanding players and have really good years this year because they're very talented. Holtzclaw especially, I think, has a really potentially big upside. So we'll see what happens. 877-353-0700. That's your text line. You know what else that is? That's also your phone line. If you would like to chat with me on this Friday about the Utes, about the Cougs, about the Aggies, about college football, about the NFL, about Salt Lake as a sports town, about anything, James is going to have to dust off his phone answering fingers, but we'll take a couple of phone calls or your text messages. Either one are certainly welcome. If you don't feel like chatting, I get it. We are a texting society today, and I get it. But if there's some of you old heads out there that would like to chat, well, now's your chance. 877-353-0700. And we'll go in that direction today here on Utah's #1 Sports Talk. 2 hours down, 1 to go. Riley Nelson in about 30 minutes. Coming up on Utah's #1 Sports Talk. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Final hour on a Friday. Ryle sitting in for Sean today here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We got our friend Riley Nelson swing by to talk a little ball with us coming up a little bit later on in the show today. And I think is Spence here today? Oh, wow. No Spence crosstalk today? No El Diablo with me today? Oh, well, I'll talk to Porter and Tony, too. I love those guys as well. But anyway, that'll be coming up a little bit later on in this hour, too. Just a reminder, Fan Fest tomorrow night at 6 up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. And if you happen to be a soccer fan, women's soccer fan, Utah, home tomorrow with Southern Utah. 3 o'clock at Ute Field. It'll be a warm one. The other reason, by the way, I'm excited about football season, that generally means our temperatures are beginning to drop. It's going to hit triple digits again this afternoon. I didn't realize we lived in Arizona now, right? I mean, if I wanted this weather, I would go to Phoenix or Vegas. Triple digits in late August is too much for me. So anyway, we hope in 13 days when the Utes kick it off against Idaho that we're maybe in the 80s, maybe around mid to upper 80s at kickoff time. Be nice. So anyway, final hour, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Phone lines are open if anybody out there would like to chat about anything that may be on your mind at 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700. Also the same number for the text line. If there's something on your mind, I was asking floor and ceiling for your favorite football team, whether those are the Utes or the Cougs or the Ags or the Trojans or the Buckeyes or the Ducks or the Jayhawks or the Wildcats or whoever it might be. What do you see as the floor for your team? What do you see as the ceiling for your team? You can hit me on the text line or pick up the telephone and give me a call. The other thing I get a lot because, I'm up around the football team a lot is people want to know people know what Devin Dampier is. People know who Wayshawn Parker is. People kind of have an idea of a Jonnu Hall or a Jackson Benny. But people are also curious, hey, who are some of these new guys? Who are guys that might have a breakout year this year? I would say last year, a breakout guy was John Henry Daly. We kind of knew the name. He comes from a football family here in the state, but he hadn't done anything. He was a red shirt, and then he came here. He played a little bit in 24, and he goes out and has 11 and a half sacks before he got hurt last year. That's a breakout season. I would even say last year, Devin Dampier was a little bit of a revelation for people. They weren't sure if Devin was going to be able to do it against Power 4 talent. Oh, yeah, he put up great numbers at New Mexico, but what's he going to do when he gets here? Well, he showed you. I would even say last year, another guy that had a breakout year was Dallin Bentley. Dallin Bentley was a guy that had caught like 3 or 4 passes in his entire career, and last year he had a huge year. Got drafted by the Broncos, trying to make the team right now. So I would also ask you guys today, if you want to chime in on this, who do you see having a breakout year? Give me a player you think for Utah or a Cougar or an Aggie or whatever team you follow could have a breakout year this year. I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you an offensive player and a defensive player for Utah that could have a breakout season this year. And when I say breakout season, they haven't had a big year. Again, Devin Dampier doesn't count. I would even tell you a guy like Braden Pagan doesn't really count because Pagan had almost 1,000 yards last year at Utah State. This is somebody that has the potential but hasn't kind of met it yet. And maybe this is the year they meet that potential. So if you want to hit me up, phone lines are open, 877-353-0700. Text line also open at 877-353-0700. Give me a player you think could have a breakout year. I'll give you 2 for Utah. This is just me kind of projecting forward just a little bit. Based on little things that maybe we saw last year. My offensive guy, Hunter Andrews. Hunter Andrews, I think, was on his way last year to a breakout year. He had a good handful of the first couple of games before he got hurt. Hunter Andrews is a guy that, well, you can line him up in a lot of different places. And they did last year, and I would be very surprised if this year Kevin McGivern doesn't do the same thing. Is he a running back? Can be. That's what his background is. Sometimes he catches the ball out of the backfield, played a little bit of tight end. That's kind of what he's listed as now. But he's one of those Swiss Army knives. And I love his attitude. He came in here. He was a running back in high school. They tried to make him a linebacker here when he got here. That didn't really take. They moved him back to running back, but it was already in season, so it took him a minute. But had he not gotten hurt last year, I think he would have been one of those guys that had a really nice role in the Utah. He was already carving that out. So my offensive breakout player this year, I'm going to go with Hunter Andrews. On the defensive side of the football, I think you've got a lot of candidates. I think there's a lot of guys. A couple of guys I wouldn't classify as breakout guys or potential breakout guys this year for Utah. I wouldn't say Jackson Benny because he had a really good year a year ago. And I think people kind of know who Jackson is now. He's kind of a defensive Swiss Army knife. You can line Jackson up in a lot of different places in that secondary, and he thrives. And I would say I probably wouldn't put Scooby Davis in that category either, because I think Scooby Davis has been 2 years ago, he got pushed into a starting role because of an injury early. Last year he was a starter at one of the corners. So I'm not gonna go with Scooby Davis. The guy I'm gonna go with is a potential breakout guy this year, is a guy that might have been a breakout guy a year ago. But he got hurt a year ago and wasn't able to do it. I'm going to go with Rabbit Evans as my breakout guy on defense this year. When I've had the ability to watch Rabbit play, he's been really, really good. And Morgan Scalley has name-checked him, as has Colton Swan, more than once. And I think Rabbit Evans, I think he would have last year had that opportunity. He was a JC All-American. I think it was at Blinn before he came to Utah. I'm going to look at him as my potential breakout player defensively. So Hunter Andrews on offense and Rabbit Evans on defense as a couple of guys that could be potential breakout players this year. You guys hit me up with yours. And again, BYU fan, hit me up with your ceiling or floor or your potential breakout player for Kalani Sitake's team. Aggie fan, or whoever you might happen to be a fan of. But those are the two I'm going to go with for right now. I also asked that question on my podcast, by the way, this week, the Crimson Corner. So it's out there. And if you're not listening now, I do it every week. This week's guest on the Crimson Corner was Eric Weddle, going into the Ring of Honor against Arkansas. So wherever you get your podcast, tune in every week. I try to get great guests and people that are tied in with Utah athletics. It's called the Crimson Corner. And the other thing, too, if you haven't listened, I did a whole series, and today or yesterday was the final one that dropped. I did a series of podcasts. I debuted it a year ago. I did it again this summer, called Under the Headset. It's where I sit down and talk to Utah coaches and staff members on the football side of things. This year there were a bunch of new coaches, so we did a bunch of coaches and some staff members too. I began with Kevin McGivern. That first one dropped almost a month ago. And I wrap it up with General Manager Joe DeRazio. And Joe's a fun conversation. I had him on my podcast, my Crimson Corner podcast early, but it's called Under the Headset. There's also a video component if you want to watch the videos. Some people like the video podcast. Go to the Utah YouTube page, the Utah Athletics YouTube page. You can catch those there, or just get the podcast anywhere you get your favorite podcast, Apple, Spotify, all those places. It's called Under the Headset, and, of course, my weekly podcast I've been doing for more than a year now is called Crimson Corner. Check that out wherever you get your podcasts. But Weddle was a great conversation this week, as he always is. And we talked about football, and we talked about the Utes, but as we always do, as Eric and I always do, we talk a little bit about life, too, and life lessons. And I'm so happy. It's a big fall for him. Tonight, by the way, Weddle debuts his Rancho Bernardo football season. They have their opening game of the year tonight down in Southern California. He's coaching his son. Then he's going into the Ring of Honor on September the 12th up at Rice-Eccles Stadium, the weekend of the Arkansas game. And then later this fall, he's going into the College Football Hall of Fame. So I am so happy and so excited for all that Eric's got going on right now. And the podcast is a good listen this week, too. All right. Let's get to your breakout players, your floor, your ceiling, or whatever may be on your mind today. It doesn't have to be college football related. This is going to be probably my last fill-in for a little while because we get super busy, and Sean's back mostly during football season. He doesn't do as much traveling. So this is your chance. Let's interact, shall we? Phone lines open at 877-353-0700. Text line, same number, but it's also open to you as well at 877-353-0700. Give me your thoughts on whatever may be on your mind today. It's a free-for-all Friday, so anything goes, and we'll go in that direction today. This one comes in. Texter 2579 says, "Hey, Bill, good to hear your voice. When you bring Spence on, when you're getting off the air, please bring back Dingo and Diablo sound." I don't think it was Dingo and Diablo. I know it was El Diablo, but I don't think I was Dingo. I think I was somebody else. He was definitely El Diablo. Unfortunately, I don't think Spence is going to be around for crosstalk today, so we'll have to do that another time. But thanks for listening in. And thanks for, by the way, going back in time, because I was on Spence's podcast, Reality Check, a couple of weeks ago. And we always have a great time when we're together. We did a show together for about 3 years. And to this day, I will tell you, I don't know if I ever had much more fun doing a radio talk show than when I was with Spence. It was a blast. Text message 9694. "Hey, Bill. Great to hear your enthusiastic voice." Well, thank you. I try to be as enthusiastic. I mean, if you know me, I love what I do. I love talking on the radio. I love doing this show from time to time when I'm lucky enough to fill in for Sean. I love doing my podcasts, my multiple podcasts. I love broadcasting games for the University of Utah. I love creating features. I am very lucky and very blessed that I get to do what I love to do for a living. So thank you for noticing, and I hope I'm enthusiastic all the time. We actually have a phone call. I have not taken a phone call on these airwaves in a long time. So, Aiden, thank you for dialing in. Happy Friday. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for listening in today. What's on your mind?
So I go to University of Utah right now, and I got a buddy who is on the team. His name is Soren Shinnefield. He's a really good offensive lineman from Colorado, I'm from, and I think he has a good chance to break out this season. You know, not putting too much expectations, but I think he puts in a lot of work and works hard, and I think the line is a good question that a lot of people have. It's just as Utes fans this year, considering how good it was last year. So, so I think it could break out.
Well, what's your buddy told you about that line with everybody having questions about it? Have you talked to him during fall camp?
I haven't talked to him recently. I was going to give him a phone call to catch up and everything. Everything I've heard, it sounds like it's going well. And there's a lot of questions when a lot of the coaching staff and a lot of the other players, had either gotten drafted or left to other programs and stuff like that. But personally, I think it's looking pretty good. Like my buddy Soren, he doesn't beat around the bush, and he's very confident in his and the team's abilities. So I'm actually really excited.
Well, you should be, because I've been able to watch practice, and there's a lot of good stuff going on up there. Aiden, thanks for your telephone call, and I appreciate you. 877-353-0700. There, again, I said it before, and I'll say it again. I've said it multiple times. Yeah, you're replacing 5 starters on the offensive line. That doesn't mean there isn't good talent in that room, because there is. And just because they didn't start a bunch of games doesn't mean a lot of those guys haven't played. You've got a number of guys up there that have been in the program for a long time that know what good football is. They've received great coaching from a guy like Jim Harding, and now from Jordan Gross. So, yeah, I have every confidence in the world that offensive line will be good this year. And I think as the year goes along, as you get a little bit more cohesion on that line, I think they'll get better and better as they go. 877-353-0700 on the text line. Texter 8156 says, breakout player Larry Simmons. That's not bad. In a very deep wide receiver room, Larry Simmons, has a little bit of an advantage coming into the year, only that he played last year with Devin Dampier. And if you'll recall, as the season went along, Larry Simmons ended up, I want to say his final numbers were like 15 catches, but he had 6 touchdowns last year. It was really the last 3 or 4 games that he really came on. Remember, he was a transfer into the program last year from Southern Miss, and he actually began his career at Mississippi State, and then he went to Southern Miss. But anyway, sometimes it just takes you a little longer to acclimate. I mean, I know we all think that this is football, and there's so many factors and mitigating factors that come in. But you could see it as he went along that he was getting more and more comfortable, and Devin Dampier was looking for him more and more. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if a guy like Larry Simmons, he gave you a taste of it last year, but 15 catches is not a huge year. If Larry Simmons comes on and has 45 catches for 600 yards and 8 touchdowns, that's a breakout year. So good text. Text message in, hey, Bill, my breakout players for this year on defense will be Cyrus Paulu. Really excited for him. On offense will be Daniel Bray. Love his speed and will be effective out of the backfield. Those are two good candidates. And I'll tell you that because Paulu is a guy that's going to play a lot of linebacker this year for Utah. And he flashed a little bit last year. And I know that Colton Swan likes his upside a lot. And Daniel Bray is another one of those guys. You know, last year it was Devin Dampier, it was Bird Ficklin, it was Nakari Rogers, it was Wayshawn Parker who were all carrying the football. But Bray, about midway through the season, got a few touches. And what you saw from Daniel Bray was his speed, his elusiveness, his athleticism. And Morgan Scalley said he had a great spring, and I think he's had a pretty good fall camp too. So those are 2 good nominees for breakout players for Utah football this year. 877-353-0700. Text message in 2885 says, hey, Bill, good to have you back. Glad to be back. Check out the documentary, The Streak. If you haven't seen it, you'll see why the Major League Baseball team needs to be the Trappers. Yeah, I've seen it. I've lived here a lot. I know the story and what they did. And that was a great time for baseball here in Salt Lake City, albeit minor league baseball, but it was a great time for baseball. So, yes. It'd be great to have Bill Murray come back too, right? I knew somebody out there that was an OG listener to the Bill and Spence show would know. I can't believe I forgot it. I knew it wasn't the dingo. But my favorite postal worker, Derek the mailman, it was Spence as El Diablo, and I was the dagger. The dagger is a lot cooler than the dingo, by the way. Who ate your baby? Derek, great to hear from you. One of these days, if I'm in Utah County, maybe I'll stumble upon you on your mail route and we'll catch up again. Otherwise, thanks for listening in. Always great to have you. El Diablo and the Dagger. That's right. I think the next time I'm on, I've got some of the old promos saved on my computer. That were the old 30-second tease promos for the Bill and Spence show. And they are fun, and they are priceless. And for some of you old heads out there that go back 15 years, you'll get a good shot. I listen to them from time to time, and occasionally I'll send one to Spence, too. And they're great. Gage Martinez. Hey, Bill. Good to hear your voice. Ceiling 12-0. Go Utes. Floor 9-4. Well, it'd be 9-3, unless you were counting the bowl game. Just saying. Math is hard. I get it. If we were super injured, that's the 9-3. Shout out Hayden Smith, my brother-in-law, Utah baseball's newest catcher. Excited to watch him up on the hill. Oh yeah. I'll be excited to see that too. I'll have to go talk to Coach Henderson and the crew about the new catcher. But yeah, baseball was fun last year. Being in that new ballpark and calling games was a blast. So it's a ways off. I'm excited for football season, but I will be excited about spring as well and what lies ahead. Texter 3371 would love to know what an acceptable win-loss floor would be for Morgan Scalley in his first year. Well, you'll never get Morgan Scalley to say that because Morgan Scalley wants to win every game. But I think that also depends on how the season plays out. If you're ravaged with injuries at lots of key positions, that kind of changes it. But that's why I said, if healthy, I think 9-3 is the floor, and 11-1 was my ceiling. But Morgan Scalley's never going to give you an acceptable floor or an acceptable ceiling. He's simply going to tell you they're going to win every game or want to win every game. 877-353-0700. Texter 7822. Bill, I don't know. I'm kind of liking the dingo. El Diablo and the dingo? Nah, I'll stick with Dagger, but see what happens. Text message. Hey, Bill, I have a question, but it's kind of not really sports related. Your voice is absolutely legendary. Do you sound like this all the time, or is it just when you work? How did you develop your voice? Or have you always had an amazing voice? I'm just curious. You're the best, Bill. Thanks. I kind of mostly sound – I project a little bit more when I'm on the radio or on TV just because, but this is kind of my voice. What you hear is kind of what you get. And I really didn't do anything to work on my voice. Years ago, I worked in radio, and I had a boss that said I needed to take voice lessons. I really didn't think I did, so I never did. I think over the years, I jokingly call this the moneymaker. So, but I've never done anything in particular, exercises, or it's reps and reps and reps. Tens of thousands of hours doing radio and television has just kind of developed the voice and what it is. But I appreciate the fact that you like it and want to listen to it. So, text message in 1570 says ceiling 8-4, floor 5-7. While I'm rooting for Scalley, there are too many examples of a protege picking up where his predecessor left off. I'm excited to see Morgan as a head coach, but I found the fan base's dismissiveness of Kyle Whittingham's importance stunning. I haven't met anybody that has been dismissive of Kyle Whittingham, and anybody that's dismissive of Kyle Whittingham and his 30 years as a coach and 21 as head coach would be absolutely positively silly. Kyle Whittingham, I've joked about this all the time. But Ron McBride turned the Utah football program around. What Coach Mack did was resurrect Utah football and make it competitive again and made the rivalry with BYU a rivalry again. Cannot be understated what Coach Mack did. Urban Meyer was only here for 2 years. He went 11-2 and 12-0 in 2 years. That's impressive. He made Utah football cool. Urban made it cool. He brought some swagger to Utah football. But everything else was built by Kyle Whittingham. He went undefeated, won a Sugar Bowl, beat Alabama, transitioned them from a group of 5 to a Power 4 conference, and then won Power 4 conference championships. So anybody that's being dismissive of his importance, that would be just absolutely silly. But there are examples of guys, proteges, that struggle, but there's also examples of guys that do not. That's why this season's going to be interesting. And by the way, your floor and ceiling are absolutely acceptable. Let's grab one more telephone call, then we'll bring on Riley Nelson. Albert's on the line. What's up, Albert?
How you doing, Bill? How's everything, man? Nice to hear your voice again.
It's great to be here, Albert. How about you? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm ready, man. I'm ready for this season. And this season going to be special, man. But I give you my ceiling is 11-1, and the Lord is 8-4.
Okay. And do you have a breakout player?
No, right now, but I have a couple.
Okay.
I think that we're going to have a really good season. Hopefully we see you in name is at your White State. So.
Well,
Excited, man.
it should be a lot of fun, Albert. I'm looking forward to seeing you up there at some tailgates. Come by, give me a high five, and shoot me a picture of that man cave one of these days.
That's for sure, man. So big out to you and go Utes.
Go Utes. Thank you, Albert. Good to hear from you. He is as big a Utah fan as you will find. My guy Albert Gamboa right there, and 8-4, 11-1 are his floor and ceiling. One more of those on the text line from Curtis. Curtis says, "Hey Bill, I'd say the floor is 9-3 and the ceiling is 10-2. Absolutely fair. Absolutely positively fair." Curtis, thank you for the text message. Keep a few more coming in. We'll read some more as we go. Take a break, though, with about a half hour to go on the program. Glad we could get a couple of phone calls in today. I was hoping we might hear from Alma today, but maybe we'll have to do that on another day. Riley Nelson's next on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in on a Friday on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. OC's out today, kind enough to let me sit in the air chair. Scratch that itch just a little bit. Final half hour on this Friday as we sit 13 days out from the Utah opener against Idaho State. BYU and Utah State also opening up very soon as well. I thought we'd talk in-state ball with a guy that loves in-state ball. Used to talk to me on a regular basis on my show, and I love to talk to him because he just likes football and talks about all of it. Former Aggie quarterback, former Cougar quarterback, former Cougar color analyst. Now just a guy who watches football on Saturdays. Riley Nelson with us here on the Sean O'Connell Show. What's up, Riley?
Great to be with you, Bill. And listen, we've had our little hiatus, so I'll forgive it. But in the intros and titles, you forgot Little League, Conference Scout Little League football head coach.
Oh wow,
so that's what's occupying Saturdays. Yeah, my oldest is into tackle now, and we got that going on. So first games we're up in Woods Cross. First game tomorrow against the Alta Hawks, so we're getting ready for it.
Well, maybe the most important title of those that I mentioned that you've held then.
That's right.
You are influencing young football players. The future of perhaps Utah, BYU, and Utah State football is in your hands, Riley. Don't mess it up.
All right, I'll try not to.
So what has you most excited about the upcoming season here in the state of Utah with those three programs that you follow?
A couple of different things. I think the possibility, so as you go to the three, I think the intrigue down at BYU is – And I know we're not supposed to talk about it and all that, but quite a few distractions in the off season, and it seems as BYU continues the success, they can't get out of their own way. One might say maybe the media's after them or controversy. We all know the media environment around BYU tends to skew. While there are, they're not without their critics, it tends to skew pretty positive. I think most people, obviously, Desert News and some of those things really help kind of keep it that. But boy, whether it's some off season issues of some of the players, to kind of now this most recent little dust up right before fall camp about is the athletic department in alignment with the flagship program, despite the number one draft picks and everything and all the excitement's gone on around BYU basketball. Let's not forget where the bread is buttered.
Yep.
And the flagship program at that university is football, and so to kind of have some of these things get to a point where it leaks out into the media that they're being addressed and discussed as far as the alignment between the athletic department leadership and the football program, all of that, can BYU do what big programs do? Because big programs are not without their controversy, but they seem to, from year to year, be able to compartmentalize that and continue their levels of success. As you look at across, the top programs of any conference, that's what they're able to do is turn down the static noise of distractions and keep the performance high. So, coming off a conference game appearance last year and conference offensive player of the year returning, some very key pieces on defense, can BYU show that they're going to be a perennial P4 top of the conference contender? And then, of course, Morgan Scally, he and I share a kinship with him. We're both, Utah Mr. Footballs, and I am a big proponent, whether they're wearing red or royal blue or navy blue, that, guys who prepped in football kind of have to stick together and support one another. So I am cheering for him in the biggest way to be able to handle the passing of the mantle. I think he will. I think he'll do a great job, but there's always that unknown. It remains to be seen. And I was listening to your show prior to joining with you and listening to the floor and ceiling. It sounds like he's coming in from some pretty high expectations from the fan base. So really be interested to see how Morgan does there. And then, of course, Mendenhall, can he do this a third or a fourth time if you count New Mexico? And what I mean by that, comes in, takes over BYU, first year, rough year, but sure enough, marching upward and onward. Same thing at Virginia when he left there. He was getting going at New Mexico before he changed directions, decided to do that at Utah State. So after that introductory year and facing, a pretty tough Mountain West schedule, I think the Aggies, especially the murder's row of their non-conference in their first games, are really tough. Can they weather early storm, and can Mendenhall, do what he's done for the past 20 years, and that's take programs from relative mediocrity to, excelling and competing for conference championships. So intrigue abounds, Bill.
All right, Riley, I'm going to ask you about the questions. The big question for each, well, at least Utah and BYU for sure. I haven't dug as much into the Aggies, but if you want to make a comment there. Big question around Utah. is the offensive line. Aside from Morgan being a first-year head coach and stuff, if we're just talking about football on the field, 5 guys all on NFL rosters, right? Or I should say 4 of the 5 on NFL rosters, having to replace those 5 guys. Now, a bunch of those guys were in the program, played snaps, had been there. They were just playing behind guys like Fano and Lomu the last couple of years. Brought some other guys in, including a 5-star guy. Brought in a guy that won a national championship in Montana. These are all guys, they've been there. But you tell me, give me your thought on that offensive line and Jordan Gross coaching those guys up. And the question, that's kind of the big one that everybody points at with Utah.
Well, I got to tell you, I think everything I've seen from Coach Gross, and of course he's from my era of playing. He's a little bit older than me, but he was a high-profile guy there, and you really respected the way that he played. Obviously, goes on to have a tremendous NFL career. Now he's back, and everything that I've seen from him as a coach, his media availability, and all those things, he seems like a guy that I would love coaching up my Hogs up front. I think one thing that should give you a little bit, whether or not you had returners or not, you've got a new offensive coordinator in McGivern. So no matter who they are, they're going to kind of be learning a new system and coming at it with a fresh set of eyes. So to me, I don't know that I'd have as much concern because everyone's free from expectations. You're free from ingrained. Sometimes when you have a longtime coordinator and a longtime system that's been really successful, you kind of anchor to that, and maybe your personnel set, you don't have the same skill set from year to year, but sometimes it's like, well, this has always worked for us and we've done that. Well, these guys don't particularly run that scheme very well. These guys are more of a man blocking power type, offensive line, where the previous offensive line were maybe good zone scheme guys or whatever. When you get a new coordinator, it wipes the slate clean. And so to have a new coordinator also when you're bringing in a brand new set of talent, actually, I think is a pretty good scenario to be in. So Utah, obviously, no lack for resources, no lack for reputation. The production of the offensive line, as far as putting it into the NFL, is one of the tops in the conference. And so I gotta believe. Well, I haven't seen these guys play on Saturday. I gotta believe the guys they got in the building, the guys competing for those jobs are no slouches. And so it always hurts to see big, well-known, long multi-year starter talent exit into the NFL, but as a fan, you got to hold on hope and trust that the program, especially one that has the track record and sustained success of Utah, is going to be able to reload.
Well, and to that point, I don't know what's going to happen, but Utah, as you know, does have a pretty good track record of developing offensive and defensive linemen.
Without a doubt. That has been their calling card and their hallmark. In fact, the Whittingham era, I think, was more obviously. We remember the Brian Johnsons and Huntleys and Asiatas and all of the many wonderful play. Of course, I know that's a very short list. We could go on and on about that, about those skill guys. But I really do think, like Witt, and he never said this, but I think he did want like that faceless star program that was just built on being so physical and so consistent from year to year. And the only way you build a program that way is with the dudes up front. The front 5 on the offensive line and the front 4 or 7, really the front 7 on the defensive, because those guys, they don't sell, lineman jerseys don't sell, but they sure do win. And that was one of the hallmarks of Whittingham. And I think that's something, of course, Scally, every college football coach knows that. I don't think it's anything Scally's going to abandon anytime soon.
All right. The big question at BYU, or one of the questions at BYU is, not the quarterback. He was good as a freshman, although I'll ask you about him in a minute. Offensive line, very good. Running back, loaded too. But who are the weapons on the outside? Because most of the guys that caught the balls last year are gone now. So your thoughts on weaponry, at least in the pass game, for Bear Bachmeier?
Yeah, giant question mark. And if you look at, obviously they only had 2 losses last year, both to Texas Tech. And what do? Even with no commodities like Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston that were highly productive outside of that, Texas Tech, anybody who watched either of those 2 games was like, all right, we're going to man them up. We're going to commit an extra guy to the box because we don't trust that these guys can create separation. So there you had established multi-year starters, multi-year players, multi-year contributors that still couldn't be successful. And granted, I know Texas Tech put a lot of guys into the league and they got a new look there. But it's not, let's not get so fixated on Texas Tech. Who might it be this year, right? In today's transfer portal era, if it's not Texas Tech, it's going to be another brand. Heck, it might even, it's probably going to be Utah after a couple years of dealing with some injuries and some other things. I can only imagine they're anxious to get back to their days of having shut down corners and just absolute stranglehold defenses. But no, Bill, to your point, they're not. My only hope is, and with the way that their schedule's laid out, my only hope is that they can use the first 2 to 3 weeks where they should be able to. Now, I think that defense is going to be good, so that defense is going to buy them a wider margin of error. I think their offensive line is going to be good again, and of course, you're returning L.J. Martin. So between them and the fact that, the tight ends and lines and that they're asking to produce are new to the program, but they're not without snaps across college football. So my only hope for this offense is that offensive line and run game combined with a play action passing game that is kind of more geared towards going to the tight ends at the beginning will give enough breathing room for them to give opportunity to this young core of wide receivers for someone to emerge, someone or some two to emerge as threats on the outside. But going into the season, it's going to be a giant question mark. I mean, Bill, my biggest the single biggest thing I want to see is BYU, because it's the biggest unknown to me, is on their first 3rd and 11, what do they do?
Right.
And I think it'll be telling, because Roderick, you can tell when he's got confidence on that 3rd and 11. Do they go ahead and call draw? If they call quarterback draw and take what they can get, and hopefully he gets a crease, but if not, they're content to just punt the football away. It's like, okay, this staff and this offensive coordinator is signaling to us that this receiving core ain't ready, and it's going to be a long road to hoe for BYU as far as producing on the outside. But if they come out and those first couple 3rd and longs, they're able to give a couple guys a chance. I'm like, okay, this staff believes that they have a potential guy or guys in it, and they're giving them an opportunity to emerge. So, I wish I had an answer for you or for BYU on the outside, but for me, that's the biggest question mark. And the game, really, the play calling in the first couple games will be indicative to me of whether or not BYU's cupboard is bare or they feel like they've got some potential.
Coach Riley Nelson with us here on the Sean O'Connell Show today. I want to ask you about the two big quarterbacks. I mentioned Bachmeier a minute ago, obviously Devin Dampier back. We found out a lot about Devin. We knew Devin was battling some injuries last year. We didn't quite know till after the year, and some of the reporting the Trib and the Athletic have done that they were pretty serious. He was playing with some pretty serious injuries all year. They still managed to go 11-2. Healthy Devin Dampier, second year at Utah, 3rd year really as a starter in college football. New offense, but maybe more weapons than he's ever had. What do you want to see? Cut down on his interception. He had a huge year last year. The 2 games he didn't perform great in, he was really pretty beat up against BYU and against Texas Tech. But that said, good year for Devin Dampier. What would Riley Nelson like to see as the next step for Devin Dampier this year?
Yeah, so I may be biased because, I was talking about the Mr. Football fraternity with Coach Scally. Obviously, I've got the BYU quarterback fraternity with Jason Beck. I truly do believe that Jason Beck is probably a top 5, top 7 play caller, OC, offensive mind in college football. And I'm not saying that to rub dirt. I think McGivern is good too. But from what I've seen with Beck and his ability from his time at Virginia all the way to last year at Utah, like his ability to be innovative and creative, and honestly his biggest thing is like he just highlights the strengths of his personnel so incredibly good. Anyway, what I was going to say is, I think McGivern's good. Jury's still out for me if he's as good as Beck. So what does that mean? It means a quarterback going into his 3rd year as a starter has to shoulder more of that responsibility together with the coordinator. So maybe he's got a little less contribution coming from the coordinator. Well, he's going to make up for that contribution with his maturity and increased gameplay. The biggest thing, and this is going to lead into, because I'm sure your next question will be about Barrett Bachmeier.
Yep.
But the biggest thing second-year starters do is they try and do too much. And I saw that at times with Dampier. I think it led and contributed to his injuries. And to your point, in those 2 big in the 2 losses, which were the big games, he was hampered and there was physical, but also you just saw him press. You just saw him do too much. And that happens. That happened with, mine weren't linear because I had a year starting pre-mission and then post-mission, so there was time between there. But I still felt it. I was like, okay, I'm not green. People aren't giving me the benefit of the doubt. I can't make these mistakes. But you also have to realize that you're not – the difference between you as a second-year starter that started, 10 or 12 or whatever games and is starting games in their teens versus a guy who's in his 3rd or 4th year and has 20 starts under his belt, that is a much wider margin than you're willing to admit. And so my biggest thing with Dampier is, okay, now that he's got 20-plus starts under his belt or however many it is, that they're trying to do too much and putting the football unnecessarily at risk and him putting himself unnecessarily at risk. I want to see that go away. To me, I don't know that Dampier, if we talk about signal to noise, like a radio frequency, I don't know if he needs to turn down. I don't know that if he needs to turn up his signal more, right? Like, I don't think that the music needs to be louder. I think his biggest thing is, can he keep that static and that noise as low as possible? And if he does, Utah fans are going to see a market improvement from him.
Quick thought on Bachmeier and where you want to see him in year two.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern. Big physical dude, had success on the ground. He's lost. Is he going to try and make up for their question marks on the outside and the lack of a security blanket through his own moxie and grit and determination? And even though the dude's 245 or 250, you know, guess what? Those D linemen are big, fast, and hit hard too. I don't want him. I'm fine. In fact, with Bachmeier, I'll say this. I'm fine because I'm yet to find someone in their sophomore season or in their second year as a starter not try and do too much. I'm fine if he tries to do too much, maybe by taking unnecessary risk in the pass game, or maybe he's doing a little bit. Roderick doesn't give a ton of leash to his quarterbacks to do much pre-snap, but I'd rather see him like, he's doing too much with his pre-snap checks or audibles, or, back there he probably, took an unnecessary risk in the pass game. I'm okay if he does too much in those areas. What I'm concerned about, though, because he is a big physical player and whose contributions on the ground were so vital to BYU's success, that he tries to make up for, him in his second year trying to do too much happens in the run game, because when you do that in the run game, it opens up and exposes. And I know they have some experience and some guys that they think are serviceable behind him, but I mean, we're talking a dude that came in as in his first starting snaps and led a team to a P4 conference championship game appearance. And so he really is special. I don't think you can just say like, oh, next man up with a guy like that. So my biggest thing for him is having maturity and wisdom beyond his years. Still take risks, but don't take them with yourself. Take them within the scheme and such of the offense. And keep yourself on the field to give your team the best chance for long-term success over the course of the season.
I think there's a good chance that Utah could be 8-0 and BYU could be 7-1 when they meet on November 7th. Would that be the biggest game in your thought from a pure football standpoint that you can remember? If those two teams are 8-0 and 7-1 respectively, or maybe 8-0 and 8-0 respectively?
Absolutely. That's the single biggest game. And I know there were some battles in the WAC, and I know there were some battles in the Mountain West. And of course, the independents, it was hard to bring more relevance. While those were some of the nastier games, at the end of the day, they didn't really mean much as far as, Utah's ultimate goal was chasing the Pac-12 championship, and BYU's was, trying to do their best to keep relevancy while being independent. So, yes, I mean, we're talking 200 feet. We're talking both on a P4 scale. We're talking about on a collision course. The one potentially has the chance to knock the other out of off course of, an appearance in a conference championship game and in the college football playoff. And Bill, I don't know what the odds are on that. I don't know if on Polymarket or any of these betting sites that you could plug that in and see, but I do think that's more likely than not, because I look at these schedules and I think they line up pretty nicely, obviously barring, unforeseen
injuries
or injury to key player. But I think, to your point, I'd be surprised if there are more than two losses between them. So I think at that point, we're talking, to your point, potentially undefeated, maybe one loss either side. I think worst case scenario is they both have a loss.
Yep.
And even at that, we got 7-1, 7-1, top of the Big 12 standings, a clash in the Holy War. Yeah, I mean, unquestionably the single biggest game in the history of the rivalry.
Yeah, it might be the play-in game for the Big 12 championship, just because Tech's schedule's pretty soft. But
I mean,
but who knows?
But
who knows what happens with if Hammond isn't healthy, they could have some issues at quarterback.
I mean, we've seen that. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I got a quarterback in my mind. Anyway, they tried to rush him back, and he played. This was years ago. This was 5 or 6 years ago. Anyway, but he played, and it was obvious his knee was not ready. He tried to do the 9-month recovery, kind of like they're doing Hammond. The thing is, with Scoresby gone, they've got like Hammond's their only shot. So now the pressure to come back is even more. We know he's not ready because of how late he hurt his knee. And like I think I don't think Tech is as much of a shoe-in as the national media is making. I think that's lazy journalism because as you look at some of these dynamics, first of all, yeah, I think they reload with talent, but I think that, and I'm forgetting his last name, was it Martinez? Who was the good linebacker for them?
Yeah, Jacob Martinez.
Yeah, Jacob Martinez. Yeah, I think his leadership is going to leave a huge void there. They might have guys that are just as talented as him, but you saw the way that dude rallied and controlled and was a true quarterback of that defense. So I think they're going to, I don't know that they'll have much of a dip talent-wise. I think you're going to have a leadership void on that defense. And then this offense sitting there waiting for Hammond to get back, it's almost a surety that they're going to he's going to want to, and they will probably allow him to come back before he's ready. And boy, is that a tremendous roll of the dice. So to bring that back to the Holy War, yeah, I mean, there were some implications, again, back in the Wacker Mountain West days, but we're talking about a berth in the conference championship game and or a berth in the National College Football Playoff, all hanging in the balance in a Holy War. It will be bedlam, Bill. I can't wait.
I think it'll be great. Hey, thanks for doing this. It's great to catch up with you. Coach those boys up tomorrow morning.
You bet. Always a pleasure, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Riley. Riley Nelson with us. Always love talking ball with him. Back to wrap it up next here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. I have come to the end of my time here today, just at ESPN 700. I'm not planning on dying or anything. A football season ahead. No Spence, though. I was hoping El Diablo would be in. The dagger without El Diablo just isn't the same.
No.
But we do have Porter Larson and the voice of the Salt Lake Bees. Apparently, it's college football night tonight at the ballpark.
It is. Yeah.
So is that why you're wearing Michigan gear?
That's right. I'm wearing my
Michigan basketball. You're wearing a Michigan basketball shirt. It's not Michigan football. Okay.
Okay, I should put this out.
Okay.
There we go.
Look at this guy.
There you go.
Hail to the victors valiant.
Oh, hail to the conquering heroes.
There's a dirty version that Ohio State fans sing,
Oh,
too.
I know. Well, everything.
But I cannot sing them on. If we were on YouTube only or a stream only, but I cannot sing them or the FCC will come down hard on ESPN 700. What's up, boys? What do we got coming up this afternoon?
Yeah, we'll look ahead to kickoff for sure. What
Okay.
are we? 14 days?
No, 13 days.
Got to get that right.
You're hosting the pregame show, Porter. You should know this.
In 13 days,
Yes.
we'll be live for kickoff. So we'll do a good amount of that. Obviously, we got our Michigan boy over here, so we'll talk a little Whittingham, Utah, and of course give you some updates on the PGA Tour as we go along the second round of the.
You're not going to break
PGA
down Bees and Angels baseball with Tony?
Oh, we will. We will a little bit.
We're going to go over some first and third situations here. It's I'm so excited for it. We've talked about the upcoming year. Obviously, I'm fired up for Michigan football every year, but now to have friends on the staff, that's always cool. Morgan Scally, who's there at Utah, I couldn't be a bigger fan of Morgan, and so I'm fired. I know him personally. It's like I have too many friends in great spots who I am personally invested in on cheering for every single Saturday.
Well, maybe they'll meet in the postseason and the playoff.
I would love that, man.
I think I saw something that said last year, had it been a 2014 playoff, Utah and Michigan would have played in the first round, like a 15-18 matchup.
Really?
I think would have been the matchup. I think was the case. It had have been 24 last year.
I would have hated that matchup. No. That was not a fundamentally sound team at Michigan. Even at 9-3, that was a very hollow 9-3.
I think with the offseason we've had, an on-the-field matchup between a Michigan and a Utah, let's just speak it into existence.
I am all about that. I would be all about the football, and it would be about everything else, and the storylines would be about everything else. I'd be all about the football for that. I think it would be a terrific situation for the sport altogether.
Since I asked this earlier, I'll ask Porter, Utah, you, Michigan. Floor, ceiling for the Utes.
And we did a little form of this exercise on the show. It's hard. I never put a ceiling, really like an undefeated season or whatnot, because that requires you to be really good.
I never pick 12-0 for anybody.
It requires the ball to bounce your way a few times. It requires you to stay entirely healthy and probably a little bit of luck along the way as well, right? So I think that this is a team that can win double-digit games. I think it's a 10-11 win season is absolutely a realistic goal for this Utah football team. I mean, they bring so much back, but because of where the questions are, and that is the offensive and defensive lines, I do think there's a little bit bigger window of what this team could be.
That's why I asked you for a floor and a ceiling.
Floor, I think, is 7 or 8 wins.
Okay.
Right? 8-4, I think, is something that very well could happen if things aren't, you're not hitting the ground running. Your offensive line, it takes a month or so to jive and get together. That's something I could see happening. But I think this is a 10-win team.
Right.
How about Michigan?
Michigan?
Not Utah.
Michigan,
you're wearing all, you're
I'll give you Utah.
You're Willie Wolverine here. I want your Michigan floor and ceiling.
Ceiling is 10-2. I think you
with that schedule.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
They still have a ton of talent, and you got a great coaching staff. So the ceiling's 10-2. And then the floor is 7-5.
Yeah.
The schedule's tough, but they have most of their difficult games come later and at home.
Well, they play Oklahoma in the second game.
No, that's why I said most of, not all. That we too. But that's why. Okay, if there's one area I'd be concerned, it's the trenches, And if there's one area that this coaching staff is going to be excellent, it's in the trenches and with the fundamentals. And so I feel really, really good about at least being able to neutralize that. So ceiling 10-2, but I think it would have to take, I just at Autzen late in the year and then in Columbus, they'll lose those 2 games, not because Kyle can't win them, not because he doesn't take them seriously.
Those teams are really good.
Those programs are running at optimal level.
Yeah, they're preseason 1 and 2.
Right,
yeah.
And Michigan is not yet at that level. So, no. As far as Utah, my ceiling's 10-2. My pick is 9-3. And the one thing that I think is not being talked about, we talked about it yesterday, I think you have coaches now, like a Colton Swan, who is primed for this situation. Mm-hmm. This isn't, and this is no slight to Ty Detmer, this is not like Ty Detmer being OC at BYU, where it's like, well, he was a great player, and I know he has no experience as a coach, but let's see what happens here. No. Or even, and this is no slight to Brian Johnson, because I think he's now, obviously, with the years under his belt, a great coach. Remember when he had to take on some heavy roles, somewhat inexperienced, when it talks about the number of years to get to a coordinator position. Okay, Utah has dudes that have been ready and waiting for this opportunity to show what they can do with these promotions, and I think you're going to see them flourish. Not just because I watched them, not just because I know them, but they have the evidence of what they've been able to do in the past, and they have all the influence and the experience around them. I'm excited, and that includes Morgan Scalley as head coach. So I picked them at 9-3. I think the ceiling is 10-2. They're going to be in it all the way through the deep part of November, and that part I'm very confident about.
Tony and Porter for the next 4 hours coming up for you. Thanks to Sean for letting me pinch hit today. Thanks to James for producing. Thanks to you guys for texting in, listening in, and a few of you actually calling in. The phones still work here at ESPN 700, so you can take phone calls from time to time. I appreciate all of you doing this today. We'll see you tomorrow up at Utah Soccer and at FanFest tomorrow night. The Drive is next here on ESPN.